I've had my license for 22 years and have spent about the last 15 years though training agents. So I'm very familiar with the challenges and struggles that you come up with and that you face. Anyway, I'm excited to be here. I get to come down here about every 6 weeks and spend a week with you guys training, and it's a lot of fun and I really enjoy it. And so I'm excited for this week to get going and hope that we'll learn some good things. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to introduce yourself. So tell me your name, which office you're in, how long you have had your license, and then what you think it takes to be successful. So who wants to go first? All this side of the room. All right. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Trudy Hartman, and I'm in the Thousand Oaks office. I am brand new.
Awesome.
Brand new.
That's my favorite.
I've had my license for a while, but I never practiced it because I had a full-time job, and I just thought if the opportunity ever arises, I'll be ready. So what I think you need for success is determination, I think, and consistency.
Cool.
That's my humble opinion.
Okay, good. No, I love it. I think all of those things are great. So thank you for being here. I'm excited that you're here, and my favorite is brand new agents. So I'm excited. So okay, I guess you're up, man.
So I'll be a favorite as well.
Okay, good.
My name's Ed Call. I'm at the Ventura's office. Just got my license maybe about a month ago.
Okay.
To be successful, I think you have to be an open slate, but you also have to be very positive and very flexible when things don't go quite right. Be able to bounce off and go in another direction.
Yeah, for sure. So cool, awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right.
My name is Jeannie Sattler. I've been licensed since 2005, but in my experience, there's never you never learn everything. There's always something new coming around. So I'm excited to be in this training course this week. From my experience, I think what you need to be successful is a goal, consistency. Just because you're in real estate, a lot of people say, oh, you know, you have the flexibility to do this, and that. No, it should be a full-time job if you're going to be successful.
Yeah, good. I love that. Yeah. So in which office are you?
I'm here in Simi.
Oh, in the Simi office. Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Awesome. Well, glad you're here.
Thanks.
All right, who wants to go next?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
My name is Tress Lewis, and I'm with the Ventura office. And I've had my license since '06, didn't hang it till '08, didn't really work at it due to life struggles and events, and then did a little, but not enough. So here I am, hoping to learn the right way to do it.
Awesome. I love it.
And consistency and a good attitude towards your clients is what I think is a good goal, and
Cool.
have fun with it.
Awesome. Good. Glad you're here. Thanks for coming. All right, middle of the room now.
I'll go next. My name is Lori Hoffman. I'm from the Valencia office. I'm a total newbie also. I've had my license for maybe a month and a half.
Cool.
I know nothing about this. I believe to be successful, you have to work really hard and put as much time. And like you said, it's a full-time job. It's not just something part-time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting that as you guys say that, when I first started, so 22 years ago, when I started, I remember I went and sat down with the manager of the office that I was working in, or going to be working in, and he said, what's your plan? And I said, well, I'm gonna just transition, and I'll just kind of do it in the evenings, and he said, yeah, that's probably not gonna work. and I thought, well, no, yeah, I think you could work, but definitely it can. There's no question it can, but it's much harder to make that transition. So cool. Well, glad you're here, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, my name's Laura Tiffany, and I'm in the Valencia office as well.
Awesome.
I think it takes tenacity, perseverance, hard work, full time.
Cool.
Yeah.
And how long have you had your license?
Oh, 3.5 months.
3.5 months. Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. Cool. Well, glad you're here. Thanks
Thank
for coming.
you. Thank you.
All right, Carminda.
Yes, hi, my name is Carmela Hernandez. I'm also in the Valencia office.
Awesome.
I got my license this year in March. And I think time management and mindset, those are the two things that are really important.
Cool. Good. Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, in fact, we will talk about both of those as well today. So that's awesome. Well, good, so let me kind of give you an overview of what we're gonna be doing. So, we'll start today at 9, obviously, and then we'll take a break about every hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half. If for some reason we get to a point though, and you guys feel like, oh, I need a break, let me know, because I'm flexible that way. But especially the afternoon. The main reason I bring that up is, especially for whatever reason, I don't know why it is. Usually the morning break, I'm good at remembering, hey, we need to take a break. But after lunch, for whatever reason, I just kind of get on a roll and just get going. And so don't feel bad if you go, hey, like, I need a break for a minute. That'll be totally fine. But like I said, I don't know why it is that way. In the morning, I always remember, but the afternoon, I just kind of get going and forget to take a break if you don't remind me. So if you need one, remind me, okay? And then we'll be done every day at about 4 o'clock. So I won't go beyond 4, I guess I'll say it that way. We'll be done, if I notice that, hey, it's coming up on 4 o'clock, we'll stop a little early if we need to, meaning just when it makes sense to do that. So we'll be done by 4 o'clock. Tomorrow, they have a sales meeting in here at 9, so we won't start till 10. You guys were aware of that though, right? So yeah, so 10 o'clock. Now, my experience with that though, oh, go ahead.
There's no meeting tomorrow.
Oh,
They ended up doing it last week because they're in Vegas.
I wondered about that, so I'm glad you're here, because I wondered, I knew the managers are in Vegas. The managers are in Vegas this week, or today and tomorrow, just on the phone, calling, recruiting, so they're gone, so I wondered if there would be a meeting.
Right, they ended up
So-
moving it a week early.
So I'm fine either way. If you guys want to start at 9, we can. I know you were told 10, so if you want to start at 10, what do we want to do?
9 is good.
Okay, sounds good to me, yeah. So I like the idea of that as well, just because then that gives us a little bit of I can give you extra stuff. Not that I, wouldn't have, not that, but we're gonna give you some good stuff. So anyway, so what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna start today, we're gonna talk about kind of just the beginnings of the company. And when I say the company, meaning John and George, who are the owners of Century 21 Everest in Utah, and then Century 21 Troop here, I want to give you the background of why they started the company and when it started and what kind of the foundation of it is. So in your books, which if you open up there, I need to get these things pages numbered, but the first thing in there is company foundation. So that's where we're going to start with. So we're going to go through and talk a little bit about the foundation, and why I start with that is what you will notice is everything we're going to talk about this whole week is going to be based upon this foundation. Meaning, if you were going to build a house, usually what the first thing they do is they will put the foundation in. And why is that? Why would you, if you were going to build a house, would you have a foundation first?
You want a solid base to build upon.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, and that's what we want to do. So I'm going to go through, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you the background of that. The other things we'll talk about this week as we go through this is we're then going to get in and we're going to do some business planning. Now, we're not going to do we're not going to complete your business plan today. We're going to get you started on your business plan today. So we'll go through that as well. Then we're going to jump into talking about some lead generation. We're going to talk about all the different ways you could generate leads. But what I'll tell you that is going to be a little bit different than typically when you've gone to a training, and there's a couple of you that have been licensed for a while, but this training is going to be a little bit different than probably any training you've been to, in that I look at it as my job is to enable you to know. Now, most of the time, most trainings, when you go to a training, what will happen is they're going to tell you this and this and this, and they expect you to believe them. But that's not what I want to do with you today. I want you to be able to know for yourself. Meaning, as we go through the training this week, we're going to do role play, we're going to work on a bunch of different things, but probably the biggest thing that I would say that is the difference is there's a few things that I'm going to really try to ingrain in you this week, for lack of a better word, that I'm going to try to ingrain. And so I'm going to test you throughout the week on these things. So here's the first thing that I want to get ingrained in you. So now when I say test you on it, I'm going to give you the answers, but then I'm going to test you to make sure that you are remembering it. So when you signed up to become a real estate agent, when you got your real estate license, what really is your job as a real estate agent? If you had to sum it up in one word, how would you sum it up?
To sell homes.
Okay, that's more than one word, I love it, that's very good.
Facilitator.
A facilitator, okay, good, I like that. Any other thoughts? All right, I'll help you then. But that's probably the best word that I've heard as I've ever asked this question. But what I would say is your job is to be a leader. So now you will notice this being a common theme that you will hear. Now, hopefully you guys have started getting the daily message. Are you guys getting the text message every day that you can hear John or George and hear? Okay, good. What you will notice is that tends to be the underlying theme of everything that we will talk about is your job as a real estate agent. And part of why I say, Trudy, that I'm so excited that I get fresh meat, that you're brand new, is because I get to train you up in the right ways of doing some of these things that you're not going to get somewhere else, is probably really the thing that I would say. So your job is to be a leader. So throughout the week, I'm going to ask you guys, what's your job? And your answer is going to be?
To be a leader.
To be a leader, right? So your job is to be a leader. Now, what is the number one skill that a leader possesses? Yeah, good, say it.
Communication.
Yeah, the number one skill that a leader has is communication. So everything that we are going to talk about this week is going to be dealing with you and becoming a leader, because really that is your job. When you come across either a buyer of a home or the seller of a home, your job is to lead them through that process. And so they come to you seeking that leadership. So your job is to be a leader. Now the number one skill that you need to acquire and that we're going to work on this week is communication. Because communication is the way that we are then going to lead people to get to the desired result that they want. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, is help them get what it is they want, right? Okay, so what's your job?
Your job is
Leader.
To be a leader. Okay, good. So all week long, I'm gonna keep asking you, what's your job?
To be a leader.
To be a leader. So I gotta remind you that your job is to be a leader. And the number one skill that you can possess as a leader is?
communication.
Okay, good. So those are the first things. So I'm going to keep asking you all week. And I expect when I say, what's your job, that I hear,
Leader.
yeah, everybody answers, right? Okay. So that's what we're looking for. Okay, so now let's go in and we're going to talk about the foundation. Now, before we get to the foundation, though, usually when you're going to build a house and they put the foundation in, they first put footings in. So the footings are kind of even give the foundation some support, if that makes sense, okay? So here's what I want to talk about with that. Now, I didn't do well in art class, so just don't judge me on my art, okay? But I'm going to test you to see if you can tell what I'm drawing here. Any ideas what that is?
Three-legged
A
stool.
badge.
Good, a three-legged stool. What did you say,
A
Laura?
badge and a
A
award.
Oh, okay, yeah, kind of could be that, right? So, yeah, but a three-legged stool is what it's supposed to be. Whenever I draw it, what's the Star Wars, those things that are,
Oh, the guy. that
what are they
calls,
called? That's what I think of when I draw this. But it's a three-legged stool. So think of it this way, though. This is the stool of life, okay? Now, when John and George decided to start this company, when they decided they decided to do it in 2009, what was going on in the economy in 2009?
Market was crashed.
That's right. Anybody have a house that went down a lot in value during that time? Yeah. It was a fun time, right? So, and when did you say you got your
In
license?
2005.
So you were here.
I was actually in Montana, but yeah.
Okay.
I was licensed and went through the whole process. And
So you remember.
the roller coaster
It was
ride.
fun, right? Now, during that time, so in 2009, things are just like the economy's falling apart. In fact, I remember in 2009, I had gone to a friend that's kind of a / mentor of mine that helped me learn a lot of the principles and things that I'm going to teach you this week. And I remember I said to him, I'm thinking of starting this business. Now, what I was thinking of doing, which I actually did, was to start like a CRM, a company that would be a contact management system for real estate agents, but also more so for the brokers. And so I remember I went to him and said, I'm thinking about doing this with somebody, what do you think? And he's like, I wouldn't do it right now. Well, so that's kind of what was going on. Well, in 2009, John, George, Rob Oakey, and then a couple of other people were sitting around a conference room table. And George said, I think we should start a real estate company. Well, at that time, everybody would, if you were to ask anybody during that time, should I start a real estate company? They'd be like, no, don't do it. And what happened was John Syatt, though, then said to George, if anybody else said that, I would say they were crazy, but because it's you, yeah, I think we should do it. So the birth of this company came out during that time when the market was really falling apart. Now, when they did it, though, one of the things that they decided, so between John and George and Rob, one of the things they decided was, if we're going to build a company, we want to build a company that, other places, agents will start and fail there, but what we want to start is a company where it's, if you're going to come and work here, you're not going to fail. So their objective was to help you, right? Now, with that being said, what you will hear John say from time to time is really, this company is more of a personal development company that just happens to sell real estate. Now, so I tell you that to preface this, because if this stool here, this three-legged stool was your life, there are three legs that are crucial to your success. Now, most companies, if you came to a training like this, or when you heard the owners of the company talk, they're going to talk about one leg of this stool, which is going to be money or the business, okay? So that's just one leg out of this stool of life. The other two legs would be your relationships and health. Now, are those three things related?
Yes.
Now, thank you, Ed. So now, in terms of that, today is actually a fitting day, because usually at this point, the story that I talk about is I usually say, who's heard of Tiger Woods?
Wow, now we have.
Yeah, what happened yesterday?
I know.
What, do you guys know what happened yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, he won, he's back. First win he's had since, I think, 2003?
I think now,
Is that right? I think it's 2003, the first one. Now, but at one point, he was considered probably the greatest ever. The last number of years hasn't done so well, but at one point he was considered the greatest ever. But so what happened to him, though?
He hit a real bottom.
Yeah, why? What happened?
Well,
Physically.
what area are you talking about?
That's what I'm asking you, yeah.
Relationship.
Well, so it seemed like it started right here, right?
And health. 'Cause
That's right, but first thing what happened is he got messed up in his relationship with his wife, right? Which then led to, Lori, what you said, he started having back problems. In fact, he went to Park City, Utah to have knee surgery done. So his health got, and then what happened to his golf game? Yeah, what has not been the same, and finally, just yesterday, gets his first win in many years, right? So one of the things that we realize is as we go through and talk today and throughout this week, keep in mind not just that we're talking about business, even though the majority of what we are going to talk about is the business and about you making money. That's going to be a lot of what we talk about. But keep in mind that we are also concerned with your relationships. Because here's for me the thing that I know is if you go make a ton of money, but it affects then your relationships or your health, that's not a win. We want you to be balanced, meaning when I say balance, have success in all three of these areas, not just in the business. So let me come back again to, your job is to be what?
Leader.
A leader, okay, good. So when they started this company, they said, we want to create basically leaders. We want to create people that are going to be leaders that can be successful in all three of these areas. So we're going to talk about all three of these areas of this stool of life. Now, just real quick, another quick story, that when I'm in Utah, people relate to this person, you may not, but have any of you heard of a guy by the name of Larry Miller? Okay, Larry Miller was the owner of the Utah Jazz. Now you notice I said was the owner. He's no longer alive. And what killed him, he's very successful. In Utah, when I bring up Larry Miller, everybody knows who he is. He owns tons of car dealerships, is where he made his money. He then bought the Utah Jazz when they were in New Orleans, brought them to Utah, created the franchise with John Stockton, Karl Malone, all of those guys. But he was very successful in this area of his life, the business and the money area. But he died when he was in his early 60s. And what killed him was diabetes. He didn't take care of his health. Now, he wrote a book. The name of the book is Driven. In that book, he talks about that he wasn't a very good father. He didn't take care of his kids. Now, thankfully, he says later in life he did, but he never really took care of his health and eventually took his life. So keep in mind that we want you to be successful not just in the business, but in health and your relationships as well, okay? So think of this as being the footings to the foundation, okay? So, where this foundation came from. So I'm going to give you actually 6 things that consist of what we would call the company foundation. So, pretty much every training that you hear, every daily message that you get from this company is going to be based on this foundation. So, and where the foundation came from actually, what happened with this is George Morris was, as a real estate agent, was selling homes. But there was one agent in particular that was just kicking his butt. Meaning he would go out to go on a listing presentation, meet with a for sale by owner or an expired listing, and this one agent kept beating him. Well, a lot of agents would beat him out. And so he went back and said, what is it that they have that I don't? What are the things that they are doing that I'm not doing? And how do I figure it out? Now, this has been a little bit organic, but it hasn't changed much for the last number of years. And here's what he found. The very first thing is they have a purpose or a why, or what you may say is they've got some dreams, okay? So purpose, why, and dreams. Now, let me just ask, why real estate? Of everything you guys could have chosen to do to make money, why real estate? Why did you choose real estate?
Well, immediately for me is because no one could cap off my income.
Good. Love it. That was the same for me, in fact. But when I decided to do real estate, it was because I was working at a bank, and the one thing that actually got me was my boss, who was the vice president of the bank, came to me and said, I need you to do this project. And I said, why are you having me do it? Because that's not my department. It was this other manager's department. And he said, well, because I know you'll do it, and I don't think she will. Yet, I knew she was probably making more money than I was because she had been at the bank longer. And I was like, I want to do a job where I get paid according to what I do. Now, the bad news with that is you get paid according to what you do. Which means what? If you don't do anything, you don't get paid, right? So, okay, so good. Why else? What are some other reasons?
Part of mine is the same thing. But I worked in the retail world for 45 years.
Okay.
And I just got tired of the amount of time, and just, you still make the same amount of money, but you may work 50, 60, 70 hours. And it really affects your relationship at home. I was actually living in Ventura, but I worked another 45 minutes that way, so I drove back and forth for about a year. And didn't see family, didn't have dinner. You know, it's just those are very important things.
Gotcha.
That I said, you know, there's got to be something different. And I have several friends who are real estate people in Ventura, and I see what kind of lifestyles they have. And I just started chatting with them, and finally decided that, you know, at some point I need to make a change, because this driving is going to affect my health and my relationships, as well as the lack of money.
Awesome. Good. Love it. Thanks, Ed. Yeah. So now here's what I want you to do though, is I want you guys to even think a little bit more on this, on the purpose, why, and dreams. This is probably something you haven't really done. But when I say, why did you want to do real estate, and we said money and to improve lifestyle, those are all great answers. I don't want to take anything away from that. But I will invite you to spend some time over the next week or 2 weeks really thinking about, what is the purpose? What is my purpose? Meaning, let's say that you go and become hugely successful in real estate. So tell me what that would look like. Just somebody throw out a number or two of what you would be looking to make in real estate. How much? How much you want to make? 200,000, okay? Give me another one.
300.
300,000, okay, good. So let's say that you do that. Or let's say that it's even more. Let's say you do even more. Let's say you do 5, 6, 700,000. Now what? What do you want to do with it?
That's it.
Okay, good. For what reason?
For my children, to make sure they go to college and do the things they want to do.
Okay, good. Now we're starting to get where I wanted to get to. Does that make sense? See, when we talk about this purpose, why, and dreams, what George figured out is that top producing agents, the successful people, all had that. They had some purpose or a why behind why they were doing it. Meaning, they wanted to set something up to be able to take care of their kids, to pay for college, to do those type of things. Maybe it's for you of, I want to get involved in, creating a better water system in Africa or something, who knows. But something that is more than just the money. Meaning, if you get the money, great, but then what are you going to do with it? What's the purpose of the money? Why do you want the money? Does that make sense? Because if you have that, see, we are emotional people. Meaning, emotion drives a lot of what we do. Because would logic tell you to get up in the morning and go knock on people's doors that you don't know, or make phone calls to people you don't know? Meaning, logic sort of says it, but when it comes down to it, does the emotion kick in to say, yeah, get on the phone and do that? Or go knock on the door? What happens? Yeah, we find other things that are better to do besides that, right? So, now, but if you understand your purpose, your why, your dreams, if you have that piece, if you understand really, why do I want to make the money? Well, because I want to take care of my kids. I want to have their college paid for. Now when it comes time to say, do I want to get on the phone or go knock on some doors? Or do I want to not pay for my kids' college? Do I want to have to be able to pay? Yeah, okay, I better go get on the phone. Does that make sense? So when we have something greater than just the money, meaning it's the reason behind the money, the thing that's driving you to want to make the money, that's what's going to help you to get there. Does that make sense? Okay, so the first part of this company foundation is understanding your purpose, your why, having some dreams, meaning what do you want to do with the money? Now, here's one of the other exercises that I would invite you to do, is I would invite you to spend some time, now, and this can take some time. For me, this is how I did it, is I sat down and just wrote on a piece of paper or in a journal and said, what is my purpose? Like, what am I on this planet to do? And then what you want to do is just keep asking yourself that question and write down every single thing that comes to your mind. Meaning, when you have it come to your mind, Russ is stupid for telling me to do this, write it down. If you say, I don't want to know why I'm doing it, write it down. I'd rather be at the beach, write it down. But keep asking yourself, like, what is the purpose that I am here on this planet? What is it that I need to accomplish? Anybody know who Horace Mann is? Horace Mann was the father of public education. And I'm going to paraphrase what he said. He essentially said that it would be a shame to come and live this life and leave not having made a difference. And so I'm paraphrasing what he said. But stop and think about that for a minute. Like, what do you want your legacy to be? When you leave this world, because it seems to be that, like, when you were born, you also got the ticket of you get to die too, unfortunately. Now, I can't 100% prove that. This is a joke. But I heard it said that half the people that have ever been alive are still alive today. So there's only a 50-50 chance you're going to die. No, that's a joke, right? But seems to be that that's probably what's going to happen. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind? What do you want to be remembered for? My dad, when I was 7 years old, my dad was killed. He was a pharmacist. And he was killed when he was 7, or when I was 7. But even today, so it's been 40 plus years since that happened. But even today, 40 years later, I will run into people that go, are you related to Doug Orchard? And I'll say, yeah. And they're like, oh my gosh, let me tell you what he did. Like, That's what I want. 40 years from now, I want people to still know who, not now necessarily, when I'm dead, but for sure now. But after I'm dead, 40 years later, I want people to still know who I was and that I made a difference in their life. Does that make sense? So that's what this purpose, why, and dreams. We want you to understand that. What is it that is going to drive you to say, okay, I don't care if people are going to yell at me, slam the door, hang up on me, because I've got a greater purpose that I'm working to achieve. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Any questions, thoughts on that?
It's awesome.
Cool, thank you. All right, next. Well, the second piece that he found is that top producers have goals. Oh, good, I love it.
It's so cold.
Oh, yeah, I should have prefaced it with that.
Underneath the vent there.
Yeah, no, thank you. I like it cold in here, so, and since I'm the one doing all the work, I'm just kidding. But I'm gonna keep it on the colder side, so bring a jacket or something, because I will keep it colder.
Christy said bring a jacket.
Did she? Good. I know. Every time I do this, a year ago in August, the training room was right next door. That is where we were before, and the air conditioner went out. So it was like 100 degrees outside, and the air conditioner wasn't working the whole week we were here. It was miserable. So I think I have that in the back of my head, so I keep it really cold now. I don't know, but I do like it colder. So yeah, so you're welcome to move around and try to find better spots if you want. But okay, so goals. So the next piece that he found is top producers have goals, a plan, and a schedule. So we're going to go through and we'll talk about, and we're going to get into and do some business planning. I'm first going to finish off this foundation section, but then we're going to go through and get you started on business planning. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time right now on this goals, plan, and schedule, but let me do just at least say this, that there are a few key things when you are putting together a goal, plan, and a schedule that you need to make sure that you do. And that is write it down. It needs to be written down. So, and we'll talk about it, and like I said, you've got in your book a business plan that we're going to go through and I'm going to get you started on today, but we're not going to complete it today. We're going to get you started on that today. So, in terms of that, so it needs to be written down. What else do you need to have when you set goals, besides just it written down? All right, I'll help you with it then. So there needs to be a deadline. So there needs to be by a certain time. Now, right at the end of World War II, how did World War II essentially end? What happened to bring that to conclusion?
Invasion of Normandy.
Okay, good. What else?
They killed the enemy.
That's right. Now, what happened to Japan though at the end of the war?
Bomb.
Yeah, basically dropped 2 atomic bombs on them, right? Now, so at the end of that though, they made the decision that they wanted to become the #1 producer of textile. Now, so they set a goal that said by the end of 1950s, we want to be the #1 producer in the world of textile. So they set a goal, they wrote it down, they put the time frame on there. Okay, so you got to have it written down, you got to have a time frame with it. Okay, now they did that. By the end of the 1950s, they were the top producer of that. Then in the they said by the end of 1960, they wanted to be the #1 producer of steel. Because what was going on in the U.S. at that time, in the 50s?
Just so, well, we were starting a company and we were starting like the auto industry open up.
That's right. And what do you need to make cars? A lot of steel, right? So Japan said, we want to become the #1 producer of that. Well, what's the problem with that? Japan wants to become the producer of steel. What is Japan?
An island and they don't have the resources.
That's right, they don't have the resources. So when you set goals, so as part of this having goals, you first have to write it down, you gotta set a deadline, and then you've got to do the next thing that Japan did, which was they gotta identify what are the challenges? What are the challenges that I'm gonna face in achieving this goal? Now, what was their challenge? They're an island. They don't have the resources. What do you need to create steel? Iron ore. Well, they don't have any iron ore, so what are they gonna have to do? They're gonna have to import it in. What else they don't have is coal in order to melt that, to heat it up, right? So they had to import that. So when we are setting goals, we need to identify the challenges, and then they came up with the solution. So you have to come up with the solutions as well. So we're gonna set some goals, we're gonna get started on that, but we've got to first write it down, we've got to put a time frame to it, we've got to identify what are the challenges to accomplishing that, and then what are the solutions that we're gonna come up with, okay? So that's when we now are into the plan. What are the challenges and what are the solutions? How are we gonna do it, okay? So we'll get started, we're gonna talk through that. And then the last piece on here is the schedule. Now, we'll talk through and talk about the schedule in a little while, but just know that what George realized is there were 6 things that these top producers had and did that other people weren't doing. They understood their purpose, their why, they set goals, they had a plan, and they had a schedule that they followed, okay? The next thing that he found is that their mindset was a little bit different, okay? So your mindset is a skill set. So we're going to talk about and we're going to work on mindset things. So the reason that we get a daily message every day is based on exactly this. Your mindset that you have. First, and the reason that message comes out first thing in the morning is because the first thing in the morning, we want to make sure that you're filling your head with some good positive things that uplift you, things that are going to help you want to achieve your goals. So the reason that happens is tied to mindset. Now, there's a guy by the name of Adolf Merkel. I don't expect you to know who he is, but does anybody know who he is? Okay, that's okay. I don't expect you to. Adolf Merkel was a German businessman. And in 2007, he was on Forbes' top 100 richest people in the world. Adolf Merkel was number 36. So he was the 36th wealthiest person in the world in 2007. His net worth at that time was $12.8 billion. So he had $12.8 billion. And what his background was his grandfather had started a pharmaceutical company. His dad took it over and then he took over for his grandpa. So he is the 36th richest person in the world in 2007. Well, what we already talked about. What happened in 2008? Everything starts going down. So his business starts to go down. At the end of 2008, his net worth had gone from $12.8 billion down to 9 point something. Let's just say $9 billion. So he lost $3.8 billion. But he still had 9. Like, yeah, he's not so, yeah, I mean, he might have had to cut back a little bit, right? But would you be okay with $9 billion? Would you still feel like you were successful?
Yes.
Yeah, but he didn't. Now, part of what caused him to lose the money was the economy, but he made a bad investment too. What happened is he had gone and bet against Volkswagen. Their stock was company. Their company was struggling. The stock was starting to go down. Well, he did what's called a short on it, meaning as Volkswagen stock would go down, he would make more money the further down it went. Well, Porsche stepped in and bailed him out, helped him out, which turned around their stock and shot it up dramatically. So instead of making money, he lost a bunch of money. So, but remember, he still got $9 billion. So he's doing okay still. But January of 2009, he steps in front of a train and kills himself because he felt like a failure. Now, so yeah, it's terrible, but the reason I tell you that story is mindset important.
Yes.
His problem is his net worth, or his self-worth was tied to his net worth. He only felt like he was worth something because of the money. And when he was losing the money, he felt like a failure and steps in front of a train and kills himself. So your mindset is crucial, and it's crucial that you understand. See, remember I said this is really, our company really is more about personal development, we just happen to sell real estate along with it. See, really what we want for you is to become your very best, whatever that is. And you know what that is, I don't know what that is, but our goal is for you to become your very best. And part of that is having the right mindset, is recognizing when you are having destructive thoughts and get out of it, okay? Now, I'm reading a book right now, and I actually have finished it. I'm going back through a second time now with it. It's called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. It's a great, great book. It actually was written, I think, in 1960s. I can't remember the guy's name that wrote it now, though. I'll look it up for you. The Power of the Subconscious Mind, meaning what goes on in your unconscious controls you a ton. And so we want to work with our mindset to make sure that we're feeding that. So there are a few things that you want to be focused on in terms of your mindset. Meaning, what things are you doing to control your mindset? Meaning, are you listening to things that lift you up and make you feel better, or are you doing things that will bring you down? Zig Ziglar, I think it was, said that your car should be like a mini university. You should be, when you're in your car, listening to things that are going to help you learn and to grow, okay? Not just listening to music when you're driving around. So there are some great things you can be listening to. So what are you listening to? What are you reading? Are you taking the time to read? See, I feel like every day as we get and talk about schedule here in a little bit, I'm going to tell you that in the morning, I think not only should you be exercising your body to have that physical exercise, but also your mind. Taking time to read something, that is going to lift you up. So what are you listening to? What are you reading? What are you watching? Like, so on TV can be a great tool, but it can also be just junk, crap, right? So what are you watching? And then the next piece is associating with. Who are you associating with? I'm trying to remember who it was that said this, so maybe one of you guys can help me. But your income is the average of the 5 people that you're around most. Who was it that said that?
I've heard it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember now. I can see the guy's face, but I can't think of his name, where I had heard it. But it'll come to me in a little bit. When it comes to me, I'll remind you. But your mindset is going to be controlled by the people you're hanging around. And so make sure that whoever you're hanging around with is lifting you up, not bringing you down. Okay? So mindset. Number 4 on the foundation is going to be then discipline and accountability. What's the difference between discipline and accountability?
Discipline you do yourself, and accountability someone holds you to it.
Perfect. Love it. Yeah, the way that I usually say it is discipline is internal, accountability is external. So you need to have the discipline to hold yourself to your schedule, your plan, but in the event that you don't, because hey, I'll be the first to admit, like there are some times when you just can't do it on your own. Then at that point is when you want to go to the outside to get some accountability. Now, Consumer Reports did a study a number of years ago on weight loss programs. And do you know what the best weight loss program that you can join is?
Probably like a Jenny Craig or something where you have to go in every week.
That's right. In this Consumer Reports, it was actually Weight Watchers that they said was the best one. And the reason was exactly what you said, though, is because why? The accountability. You have to go get on the scale every week, and the scale doesn't lie. Like as much as we lie, the scale doesn't lie. You go get on the scale and it's going to tell you the truth. You want the truth? You get on the scale. That's the truth, right? So what they said is that the reason that the Weight Watchers was so effective is because of the accountability. Is because you had to show up, you had to get on the scale and weigh yourself in front of somebody who could look and see the number, who you could say, oh, I did great all week, and they know the truth based on what the scale says, right? Okay, so the accountability. So discipline, so we need the discipline to do it, but there's also the accountability if not. So one of the things that I would recommend for you, if you find yourself struggling in terms of goals, plan, or schedule, of you being off track on those things, is get an accountability partner. Find somebody that you can say, okay, here's the deal. Laura, I'm going to go to the gym 5 times this week, and if I don't, then I'll eat a can of cat food or whatever. I mean, set up something that's going to be worse than not going to the gym. Does that mean, or than going to the gym? Does that make sense? Meaning, maybe I say, if I don't go to the gym, I'll give you $10,000 at the end of the week if I don't go 5 times. You think I'm gonna go to the gym? Yeah, I'm gonna get up and go to the gym, even though I don't feel like it. See, because part of the challenge is, we a lot of times will live our life based on how we feel, not based on what's gonna bring us the success. So, part of what you wanna do is have that accountability partner that you can say, okay, look, it's gonna be way more uncomfortable to give Laura $10,000 than it is to get up and just go to the gym. So when the alarm goes off and I go, I don't feel like it, I can go, okay, yeah, but I don't feel like giving her $10,000 either, so I'm going to the gym. I know, sorry.
I wanna be your partner.
I know, right? Except for that I will go to the gym, so you won't get it, so. All right. Any questions or comments, thoughts on that? All right, next. The next thing that George found is that the top producers, so the top producers have their purpose, their why, they've got a goals plan schedule, they have a great mindset, they've got strong discipline, they've got good accountability set up, and then the next one is the skill sets. So there are 12 skill sets. Now I'm going to give you the 12 skill sets that you need to acquire or work on in your business. And part of, as I give you these 12 skill sets, what I want you to do is kind of rate yourself on them as well on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being horrible, 10 being good. Of how good you are at them. Because part of what you're going to want to do, and we're going to go through and we're going to talk about these skill sets. Now, let me pause though for a second on the skill sets for a second. Because, what's your job?
Leader.
Leader.
Good. Yeah, so we got 2 or 3 people I think that said it. So we're halfway there. What's your job?
Leader.
Okay, so be a leader, right? And the number 1 skill of a leader is
Communication.
communication. So think of communication. That's not one of these 12 skills that we're going to talk about that I'm going to give you. But think of communication as the umbrella that's going to cover all of them. Or the envelope that they all sit inside of, okay? Because really that is your number 1 skill. And we're going to talk a lot about communication this week. I mean, probably way more than you even want to know. But it's good stuff, so stick with me. Don't run out. Okay? So the skill set. So there's 12 skills. So now I'm going to try to give them to you just in memory. If I can't remember, I may have to go cheat and look. But first one, set appointments. So your number 1 skill, the first skill we need to have is setting appointments, right? Obviously we got to set appointments. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We will start to get into that one. We're going to work on the setting appointment skill this afternoon a little bit, but a lot tomorrow. Pretty much the whole day tomorrow is all going to be on setting appointments. It's talking about how do we set appointments, okay? And we're going to role play, we're going to work on a bunch of things, and we're going to talk about every different way that you can prospect. You guys are going to give me the list of every way we can prospect, and we're going to go through and talk about, okay, here's how you want to approach it. Now, keeping in mind, the umbrella over all that is what? Communication. Good. Okay, so your job's to be a leader. Communication is the number 1 skill. The 12 skills that we're going to talk about with you guys. Okay, so the first one is set appointments. After we've called. Now, our objective is going to be to set appointments. But are we going to get an appointment every single time we call somebody?
No.
No. I wish, but we're not, right? So the second skill is, because we're not going to get appointments with everybody the first time, the second skill we need to acquire is good lead follow-up. We got to have good lead follow-up skills. It drives me crazy to watch agents spend all this time prospect, get a bunch of leads, and then they never call them again. Now why? Why do we do that?
They don't have the skills to do the follow-up, to initiate the conversation.
Okay, good. I like that. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I honestly, part of when I ask that question, I want you to tell me, because I don't know why. I don't know why we don't do it. We spend all this time generating leads, put them on sticky notes that we then just leave sitting on our desk or wherever, and then we never call them back.
Time management, maybe?
Yeah, some of it's time management for sure. For whatever reason, we feel like, okay, I gotta go get on the phone and make all these calls. Meaning, if I told you today, like you can't go home until you get an appointment today, or that something really bad was gonna happen if you didn't get an appointment today, what would you do?
I start knocking on doors across the street.
Okay, well, and now part of when I asked that question, most of you guys are so new, so I'm gonna ask the two or more veteran. If you had to get an appointment today, who would you start calling?
My spirit probably.
Okay, good.
That's probably what I would do.
Do you have any leads?
I have a few.
Would it be good to call those leads? I mean, meaning the people who said, hey, 3 months ago said, call me in 3 months. They might be a good person to call, right? Now, for me, now I'm going to tell you a story later on about me and where this change took place for me in my business. But when that happened, I immediately went to every lead that I had and started calling these people. Because I realized, like, we do all this work to get these potential buyers and sellers, and then we never follow up with them again. So you got to have good lead follow-up skills, okay? Which will lead to actually number 6, but I'm going to hold that for now, okay? All right, so we're setting appointments, we're doing our lead follow-up, we're doing lead follow-up for what purpose? To get an appointment, right? Okay, good. So once we now get an appointment, what would be the next thing we would want to do with the people once we get an appointment with them?
Qualify.
Good, yeah, so that's the next skill. So the next skill is pre-qualification. We want to be able to pre-qualify. We want to pre-qualify. Now, notice that I'm saying pre-qualify, not disqualify. What's the difference between pre-qualify and disqualify?
Just asking a few questions before the appointment to learn about your lead and see where they're going in real estate.
Okay, good. I like that. What would be disqualifying?
Not bothering with them again.
Yeah. And the reason
Crossing their name off.
Yes, thank you. The reason I bring that up is because too many times what happens is I watch agents go out and they try to disqualify the person. Meaning, I worked so hard to get an appointment, I finally got an appointment with you, and then I try to disqualify them. I try to figure out the reason I shouldn't go meet with them. Now, why would we do that? Why would they go try to not go meet with them? I have an idea.
Subconscious mind.
Yeah, good, I love it. There's something in their subconscious mind, but what is it?
No fear.
Like
Fear, yes, fear.
Fear of failure, negativity.
Oh,
It's hard to
they
think that
it's
someone
a
would do
waste
that
of
though.
time.
But it's so true. I think most of the time they try to then disqualify the person so they don't have to go meet with them. Now, the reason leads to our next skill actually. The next skill after pre-qualifying is presenting. The challenge that I think of why sometimes agents end up disqualifying people trying not to go on an appointment is because they don't have a good presentation or they don't know what to say, meaning, I promise you, with how new some of you guys are, I promise you right now, you're scared to get an appointment because, well, what if they said yes? I don't know what I'm going to do when I get there. Right? See, we're more afraid of the yes than we are the no. Even though we would say, well, I don't want people to reject me, yell at me, hang up. Like, we're more scared if they said yes. For me, I know when I first started. I remember the very first time I went out door knocking. So Laura, you talked earlier about door knocking 1,500 doors or something.
Yeah.
So I remember my very first day. I know exactly the street it was on, everything. I remember I had gone out there there was me and 2 other agents had gone out to go door knocking. So we pull up, we park the car, get out of the car, and I remember I turned to the guy's name was Dave that I was there with. I turned to Dave and I said, okay, now, what am I going to do if somebody says yes? And here was the best, is he goes, they won't. That was the best thing. But I'm like, okay, but what if they do? What if they say yes, like, yeah, we want to sell our house. And he's like, yeah, they're not going to. And I'm like, I know, but what if they do? Because now notice, what was I afraid of? Yeah, I was afraid of if they say yes, but what am I going to do if they say yes? And he's, well, he just said, just tell them that you got to finish what you're doing and you'll come back later. And I was like, okay, I can do that. So I go out and knock on doors. So I'm knocking on the doors, I get to the very last house on the street, I go knock on the door. Guy answers the door, and I followed the script that we have in here, we're going to go through later, of, you know, hey, we just listed a home over here for sale and blah, 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 blah. You know, who do you know wants to move into the area? Nobody. Well, when do you plan on moving? He goes, yesterday if I could have. And I said, okay, well, so if you know, where would you go? And he said, to Nevada. And I was like, oh, well, so when do you want to do it? Like right now, I want to do it right now. And I was like, okay, well, I'm busy, so like, can I come back later and talk to you? And So I got and I actually ended up listing the house, which actually is another good side note to that. So I get the listing appointment with the guy. I go back and I find Dave out on the door knocking, and I'm like, I got an appointment. He's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, this guy wants to sell his house. Okay, and I'm like, well, so now what do I do? And he's like, I don't know, let's get back to the office and we'll have you talk with Tom, who was our manager. So I go to our manager and I say, okay, so Tom, what do I do? And he printed out the listing paperwork, handed it to me, just said, just go out and have him sign this. So okay. So I go out there to the appointment, I sit down with them, I'm like, all right, I just need you to sign this, and they sign everything. They get done signing it, I go back, turn it into the office, and the manager's like, they signed that? I'm like, well, yeah, you told me that's what I needed to do. And he was like, well, good job, that's awesome. And I was at the time like going, well, why is the manager thinking like that's weird that they signed it? Like the guy's the manager, like he should be like thinking it was right. Well, I found out like the next week at our sales meeting, at the sales meeting, he stands up in front of, I don't know, there was 30 agents or something there, and he stands up in front of them and he goes, guys, we gotta give Russ a hand, and everybody's clapping, and he's like, you got a listing, and I'm thinking like, am I the first person in the office to ever get a listing or what? But then what he said was, this is his first listing ever, guys, and he listed it at 7%. He got 7% from the sellers to agree to pay him 7%, and everybody's like, whoa, that's awesome. And I was like, isn't that what we do? Like, that's what the contract said was 7%. What I found out later is everybody would cross it off and change it to 6. So the reason the manager was even like shocked was because he wasn't used to seeing somebody sign and agree to a 7% listing. So part of that, let me tie this back to mindset. See, if your mindset, if your belief is, and I know, see, in Utah it's very common for us to get a 6% listing. I know down here it's been common to get what? 5. And you offer 2.5. It's just a mindset. That's like, I know there are some of you sitting here like, there's no way I could go get a 7% listing. Well, I'm going to work on it with you this week. You can go get a 7% listing in this market. So I'm going to teach you how to go and do that. Now, what's the number one skill we probably would need to do that?
Communication.
Yeah, communication, right? So if we become good leaders and we communicate the right things, we're going to be able to help people see why it could be to somebody's advantage to list for 7%. Because here's the thing. Why would somebody want to list their house at 5% versus 7?
Well, they think they're saving money.
Because they think they're saving money. But if you could show them a way that they would make more money by listing it at 7, would they do it? See, here's the problem. The challenge is we think, again, it's back to this mindset, we believe that people wouldn't do it. But I tell you what, I see a lot of people driving Mercedes down here. Why are they not driving, don't be offended. Why isn't everybody driving a Hyundai or a Kia? They're cheaper. Okay.
They have the money.
Okay, why else? You're right.
They're willing to spend the money for quality.
Is that true? So would they do the same thing when it comes time to sell their house? See, it all just boils down to if we believe that we're only worth 4 or 5%, that's probably all they're going to believe you're worth too. So is mindset crucial? Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay, so where are we at on skill set? Sorry, I didn't.
Presenting.
Oh, presenting. Okay, so good. So one of the things we're going to work on with you guys, probably on Thursday is when we're going to do this. Yeah, either late Thursday. Yeah, Thursday. No. Late Wednesday, early Thursday, one of the two, okay? We're going to work on, I'm going to take you through and teach you the best listing presentation that you could have, okay? We're going to go through and we're going to work on your listing presentation. So, but part of that actually, in fact, in a lot of ways, everything we're going to be working on between now and Wednesday, early Thursday, is basically to get you set up for that. Meaning we're going to go through a lot of minutia to get to that point because there's a lot of crap we got to get rid of on our mindset to get there. Does that make sense? So a lot of what we're going to be doing is working towards helping you get prepared because your presentation is probably the most important thing. Meaning, if you have a good presentation, you're not worried about sitting down with somebody and taking them through on a listing presentation or a buyer presentation, you're not gonna be afraid to prospect. Because the truth is, what I said to you guys is so true, really. You're more afraid of somebody saying yes than you are them saying no. And once you're prepared for that with presentation skills, you'll be less worried about it. Does that make sense? Okay. Next then. Let's see. Let's do next pricing. Pricing is a skill set as well. Being able to price homes. So in terms of pricing property, especially you guys that are newer, what you need to be doing so that you can become good at the pricing skill set is you got to go out and look at properties. So you need to be going out and seeing homes. So hopefully you're out showing some homes to potential buyers, but if not, you need to go out and be previewing property. So just go find a house that's in an area that you want to go look at it, call up the agent and say, hey, I want to come preview this home to see if it would work for some of my clients. Go out and take a look at the home, then go back to the office, sit down and put together a CMA on it. So try to figure out what the price should be on that house, and then just watch it over the next month or so and see when it sells what you thought the price should be and what it actually sells for. Does that make sense? And just like I think every week you should be out looking at a few homes, running some CMAs to pricing them, and then watching them to see what price you thought that they would sell for versus what they sold for. By doing that, it's going to give you the confidence that you know what you're doing and that you know how to price property. And if you're finding you're missing it, then that's going to help you adjust it. Does that make sense? So pricing property is a skill that you need to be working on, and the best way to do that is by out looking at properties, then going back to the office, run CMAs, and then keep an eye on them and see. Okay? Now, in the event we have some time on this, I'll work on and show you a few things in terms of pricing property. Now, I don't use your MLS, so I'm not going to be an MLS expert with yours, but it doesn't matter. I can show you the process because it doesn't matter on the MLS if you know the process. Does that make sense? So we'll work on that some too. All right, next. After pricing is going to be price adjustments, because unfortunately we are into a market that is not going to just have every house sell right away. Have you guys started to see that yet? Yeah.
And they're having to lower the price.
Yeah, it's becoming more common with that. So there's a whole pricing strategy, which we're not going to go through right now. The idea right now is I'm just running you through the skill sets. Throughout this week, we'll talk about these things. But there is a pricing strategy that you should follow with your clients. Now, I actually have a listing right now that was a friend of a friend of a friend kind of a thing, that when I listed the home, we did an addendum that we put in there that the price would be adjusted to X on this particular date, and then if it hadn't sold, then on this next particular date it would be reduced to this price. So we just structured that as part of listing the property. This is when we're going to reduce the price and what we're going to reduce the price to. Now, it ended up getting an offer at the full price, but pricing property and getting price reductions, that is a skill that if you will just work with the client on it, which will lead actually to the next skill let me give you that while I'm thinking about it, which is future pacing. The next skill is future pacing, meaning I had set up the clients to say, look, this is what we need to be prepared for. So in the event it sells at the price you want to list it at, awesome, that'll be fantastic. But if it doesn't, we need to be prepared to adjust this and do this. So it's future pacing, telling them what to expect, helping them see, look, when you list your home, this is what's going to happen. And then telling them what to expect so that when it happens, they're not surprised. See, I see a lot of times agents get a property under contract, and then when the buyer's doing their due diligence, they get scared away from the property, but it's because the agent didn't do that future pacing. They didn't say, hey, here's what you can expect. And when you go do your inspection, when the inspector gives you the report, it's going to look like the house is about to fall down. They're going to have all these things. But even a brand new house, they're going to have all those things. So you just got to be prepared to know, we're going to look through those things and figure out what are the ones that are really the biggest issues. And here's how I help the clients the best with it, is I tell them, look at that home inspection as basically just being a checklist of, this is to bring you up to speed on the property so you know what to watch for. Because when you own a home, unfortunately, here's a perfect example. I got a text from my wife this morning. I flew in yesterday. My wife texted me this morning and says, 11:30 last night, our air conditioner started making this really loud noise. I'm sure the neighbors hated us last night. Like, maintenance just as part of owning a home, right? Like, I'm gonna probably end up being in the next, well, hopefully it'll cool off enough now, we won't need it. But spring, probably I'm gonna have to go buy a new air conditioner, it sounds like. That's just part of owning a home. I mean, if you will future pace them, help set them up for this is what you can expect, then they are not, it doesn't kill a deal. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so where are we at?
Number 8, future pacing was the last one.
Okay, so we talked about pricing, price reductions, then future pacing, which future pacing kind of leads that into that price reduction, helping them understand that this is what we want to be prepared for. So after future pacing, the next one let's do is negotiating. Okay? Because when we get offers in, we need to be able to be good at negotiating. Now, most agents, anybody, I know most of you are newer, but you have a listing, had a listing yet or haven't sell? Okay. So, here's what's typically happened. You guys tell me if this is not true. But it is not uncommon in today's world, you get a listing, somebody goes and shows it, and then they email an offer to you. Is that negotiating?
No.
But that's how most agents are doing it. Like, if you want to become a good negotiator and help your clients, the best way to do that is call the listing agent. So, who wants to be my listing agent? Let me show you what I mean. All right, Trudy, okay.
What do you want me to do?
Okay, so let's just assume you have a home listed. I brought a buyer through and showed your listing, okay? And so I'm writing an offer on her listing. Prior to writing the offer, I'm gonna call and say, hey, so Trudy, my people are really interested. We're probably gonna be writing an offer. If I got that sent over to you today, how long would you need to be able to give me a response? When do you think you could get with your sellers?
I can get with them today, this afternoon.
So this afternoon, okay, so you could probably give me an answer tonight? Okay, well, awesome. What is the most important thing that they're looking for?
They want their price, they want their full price.
So the price is more important than anything. Doesn't matter what dates they have or anything like that?
I think for them, they need a certain amount of money because they're gonna be retiring.
Okay.
And they've got a budget and they need their full listing price or as close to it as possible.
So full listing price or as close as possible. Okay, great. So what would be the ideal closing date for them? When would they want to close?
I would say they probably need 45 days.
So 45 days. Okay. So, but what am I doing?
Negotiating.
Yeah, but what am I doing?
Getting information.
Yeah, I'm fact finding. I'm finding out, okay, what is going to be, if you want to negotiate a deal that works really good, find out what's most important to that seller. What is going to be the most important thing to them? And it may be price, but every now and then you get one that says
They want out.
they want out this quickly, or you have the other side that says they don't really want to move until X date. Okay, well now that I know that, I can go back to my client and say, okay, here's what's most important to them. How do we structure this so that when we get it, the deal that is most important to them? Now, one of the other things is finding out what like if they're worried about something. So I might even say, well, is there anything they're worried about in getting the home sold? Well, yeah, they're worried about that the person buys the house is not going to take care of it or whatever it is. If I can find out, then we can structure the offer and I can go back and tell her, hey, let your clients know. Or even better, one of the things that when I first started 22 years ago, when we wrote an offer, I would have called and said, Trudy, I've got an offer. When can I come and present it to your seller? I went and sat down in front of the seller and said, let me tell you about my buyers. Like, they just love the house. They've got 2 kids. They can picture their kids in the backyard and blah, all this. Like, you try to get to the emotion side of it, of helping them see what's going on with it. And then I can say, look, and they know how worried you are about your garden and your whatever. And In fact, they'll even keep watering your garden and let you come back and pick all of the vegetables at the end of the season. I mean, whatever it is, but like that, believe it or not, something like that may have them be like, well, I want them to get the house. I have seen it so many times where the seller just decides they like this buyer and they want them to get the house. And to the point they'll even say, well, tell them if they'll pay us this dollar amount, we'll do it. Like, I've seen scenarios where we were not the highest offer, but because we found out other things that would work for the seller, they accepted our offer over somebody else's. So now in a competitive market, same kind of a thing. If you can have them fall in love with who they are buying the house. So just some ideas, okay, on negotiating. All right, next. What number are we on?
9.
Okay, customer service. I think I'm missing one. I mean, I know we're only on, I just gave you 9, or is that 10?
That's not.
That's 9.
All right, well, as I'm talking, we'll see if we figure it out here. So, okay, so customer service. So customer service, hugely important that we do that. Now, there's a great book for this. If you haven't read it, it's easy read, but Raving Fans. Has anybody read it? It's awesome. Gives you some really good ideas. That's good customer service. In fact, about a year ago, most of you weren't here, so you're not going to remember this. A couple of you might, but about a year ago, the summit that we did here, we had one of our top agents from Utah flew down and was on a panel here. Were you at that summit?
I'm not sure.
It was Justin Udy. He came in from Utah, was on a panel. But one of the things with him, he talks about, he will make over $1 million this next year, and his number one thing that he talks about is world-class customer service, giving his clients world-class customer service. Now, in fact, while I'm thinking of it, I'll give you a little indication of how to improve your mindset and get the listing commission up when you're listing a home. One of the things that he does is he will go in and say, I have 3 different options for you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Here's what I'll do for 6%, here's what I'll do for 7%, and here's what I'll do for 8% on the commission. Now, what does everybody want?
The best service.
Yeah, the best service, but and probably what I like to call is the Goldilocks principle. Really, he follows this Goldilocks principle. This one's too low, this one's too high, this one's like for me, like buying an iPhone, they just came out with 3 new iPhones. I'll buy the one that's in the middle. Like that's kind of, you just use the Goldilocks principle. Go with the kind of in the middle. Typically that's what people will do. What they do though is they'll show up and say, well, I want you to do all the services you do for 8%, but will you do it for 7%? So what you do is structure it to where you can say, so he has it set up of, I believe in world-class customer service. Here's what I'll do for 6%. Here's all the services I'll give you for 7%, and here's all the services I'll give you for 8%. Then they may say, somebody may say, well, I want you to do all the services that you would do for 8%, but I want you to do it for 7%. Okay. So for you, if you guys are worried about it, people are usually seeing 5. You come in and say, this is what I'll do for 5%, this is what I'll do for 6%, and this is what I'll do for 7%. And then what will people say?
6,
Yeah, I want you to do all the services you do for 7%, but will you do it for 6%? And just make sure that you will do that, and then you say, yeah, sure. Now, you just got 6% listing. Now later I'll tell you how to get 7%. I'll help you with that, okay? All right, so skill sets. Customer service. Make sure that you are delivering world-class customer service. We want to create, basically, people that want to refer us to other people. Does that make sense? All right. Let's see, next one is working with highly qualified buyers. Now, when I say working with highly qualified buyers, what does that mean?
Buyers that are really ready to buy and can buy. They have the funds, they have everything.
Okay, good. So that's a piece of it for sure. We want to make sure they are qualified, meaning they can afford to purchase. But when I say highly qualified buyers, I'm going back to when we talked about pre-qualifying, of saying, I want to be able to be dealing with people that are really serious about buying. So when we say working with highly qualified buyers, I'm more meaning people who the way I like to say it, which I'll give this to you actually later again, so I'm gonna give it to you quick right now. But I want people that have clear and present needs that can be met, that they're prepared to buy a house now. But when I say highly qualified buyers, that's what I mean. Clear and present needs that can be met and they're prepared to do it now. Meaning when we see the house that meets our needs, we'll write the offer. Does that make sense? All right, what number are we on?
That was 10.
So I'm giving you 11 next? Okay, next one is objections. Number 11 is objections. We need to be able to handle objections. Now, here's the good news. The objections you're going to get from your clients or potential clients are the same ones that I've been getting for 22 years, which are the same ones that I know, the person who I know who's been in the business longest, she's been almost 43 years now in the business, and I asked her the other day, have the objections changed in 43 years? And she said, no. They still give us the same objections. So what are the objections that people you would think are typically going to give you?
Will you lower your commission?
Okay, good. That's one. What else?
Not in the market right now.
Okay, good. What else?
I'm not ready. Like I've got a house or I've got a car to pay off, just finances, I'm not
Okay.
there yet.
Good.
Are
What
you
else?
an experienced agent?
Okay, good.
Heard that one.
Okay, good. Actually, let's stop on that one for a second. For whatever reason, when you're new, that's what you hear. Well, I know what the reason is, but you hear it. Why is it that you hear that when you're new versus like 22 years later? People don't ask me how long you've been doing this. Do you get asked that very often?
Never.
Yeah. Why do you think people, when you're new, why do they ask you versus now, once you're seasoned, they never ask you that. But when you're new, they ask you why.
They can
Oh,
tell.
they can tell.
How good you get off.
That's right. It's because your job is to be what?
Leaders.
And your number one skill is what?
Communication.
And that communication skill gives away, I'm new, and has them go, how long you been doing this? So, now, here's the good news. Remember I said a lot of what we're going to be doing is to set you up for a good presentation? I had an agent that, and this was about a year and a half ago, that had come through this training, went out after the training, went through onto a listing presentation. He's on those listing presentation, very first one he had ever done. But he had come through the class, he had practiced and worked on it. Goes out on his listing presentation, sits down with the seller. At the end of the presentation, the seller says yes, they sign. And they say, now how long have you been doing this? And he says, believe it or not, you're my very first listing I've ever been on. And they said, yeah, right. No, really, how long have you been doing this? And he said, because he thought they were questioning like what you're saying, that they were like, whoa, how long have you been doing this? And he said, no, believe it or not, because he looked young. Sorry, I should have thrown that in there. He was a younger agent, meaning he was like early 20s. And they said, well, how long have you been doing this? And he said, believe it or not, you're my first. And they're like, yeah, right. How long have you been doing this? And he goes, no, really. This was my first ever listing presentation. And they're like, whatever. Like, how long have you been doing this? And he's like, no, I'm not kidding. This is my first one I've ever done. And they were just like, all right, whatever. You're not going to tell us. But it's clear you've been doing this for a while. He came back to me and was like, I can't believe it because I really told him, like, this is the truth. I've never done this before. And they wouldn't believe me. So know that if you have the confidence, and the way you're going to get the confidence is we're going to work on that and we're going to help you with it, but is practicing it and getting good communication skills to where you can go do that presentation and they're going to go, wow, you've been doing this for a while, haven't you? So keep that in mind, okay? All right. So what other objections? There's at least one other one that like you hear the most. When you go out and you present to somebody and at the end they say,
I've got more agents to interview.
okay, good. That wasn't the one I was thinking, but that's a good one. I like that. How about we want to just think about it? Like, there's basically 10 objections that are the same. You'll never, nobody, it'll be a great day when somebody invents a new one that we're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard that before. But there's like 10 objections that, and I'll go through those with you. I'll point them out to you. But there's 10 objections that if you know how to deal with them, then you know how to deal with them. Like there's only 10 you're gonna get, and that's it. And they don't change. So you're not gonna be surprised when you get out there, you can know, okay. Now, the truth is, a good presentation, which is why I said this whole thing is setting you up for that. At the end of a good presentation, you've already answered all those questions. Because really, objection is just a question that you left unanswered. Is really all that is, okay? All right. We have one more? I don't remember what it is now. So, okay, so let's think through what we have. Okay, we've done setting appointments, lead follow-up, pre-qualifying, pricing, price reductions, future pacing.
Negotiation.
Customer service.
Working.
All right.
So can I ask what you said to the clients when they said you want to think about it?
Oh,
You're not ready?
yes, you can. Let me figure out what I missed here. Setting appointments, lead follow-up, pre-qualifying, presenting, handling objection. Oh, the most important one, duh. Closing.
Closing.
The closing skill. That's funny. So, all right, so, sorry, can we ask your question now? Sorry, say that again.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to find out what your answer was to a seller when they say we're not ready, we want to think about it.
Okay, good, let's do it. So let's role play, okay? So I'm the agent, you're the seller. And is it just you, or are you sitting there with somebody else?
It's me.
Okay, so it's just me and you. Okay. So how soon do you want to get started on getting your home sold?
I don't know, I'm just, not ready at this time.
Oh, that's when you're supposed to say, I want to think about it.
And I want to think
Oh,
about it.
okay.
Sorry. I want
Okay.
to think about it.
Okay, so you want to think about it? Hey, that's great. If I were you, I would feel the exact same way. The two minds are better than one. So let's think together. What did you want to think about?
Well, a lot of things, like how much I can sell it for.
See, now she's
Or-
going to give me more objections. That's okay.
Where am I gonna go next? What are the,
Okay, so if that's what they were saying, that's totally gonna be different now than just we want, like, meaning, typically if it's we wanna think about it, it's, we've done the presentation and they're like, yeah, we think everything sounds good, we're happy with everything, we just wanna sleep on it, and then we'll tell you tomorrow. Give us a couple days. Something like that, does that make sense? So, cause what you were starting to say was more the, I've got all these other objections. So and I'm happy to deal with those other ones, but are you wanting to deal with that, or just how do I handle it?
okay, let's just.
Okay. So how do you feel about getting started on getting your home sold today?
No, I don't know, I gotta think about it.
Okay, well, two minds are better than one, so let's think together. What is there to think about?
The process,
Okay, so,
and I'm not 100% there.
okay. So now we're back to, I got other things I gotta deal with. Does it make sense what I'm saying
Yeah,
though?
well, it happens all the time.
But if what you were saying is we just wanna think, everything sounds great, but we just wanna sleep on it tonight and then we'll call you tomorrow.
Okay, we will sleep on it tonight and we will give you a call.
Okay, well then let's do this. Let's go ahead and sign the contract tonight, but then we'll post date it for tomorrow, and then I'll call you in the morning, and if you say no, I'll just tear it up. But otherwise, I can get started right now and maybe even have a buyer by tomorrow. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, so does that make sense? So when you're saying, how am I gonna deal with it if they wanna sleep on it? But really, when I was asking that, she was leading me to other objections that said, okay, I didn't answer all these other questions. Does that make
So you
sense?
didn't do it in enough presentation.
That's, at the end of the day, I didn't do a good enough presentation, is what she was telling me.
Convinced, okay.
Yeah, does that make sense? Is that helpful? So ultimately, if they say they wanna think about it, that's great, let's just sign it right now, you can think about it overnight. If in the morning you decide no, call me and I'll tear it up. Otherwise, I can get started today, trying to go find you a buyer for your home. Sound good? Alright.
Thank you.
Okay, so closing is the last skill. Now, in particular, in terms of closing there's two pieces to this. Closing to get the appointment and closing to get the deal. meaning like I'm on the presentation, I've got to close. And what I will tell you, and we're going to work more on this, because remember, right now, I'm just giving you what are the 12 skills, remember? So, there's only 5 ways in the English language you can ask for an appointment. And I'll give those to you later, but there's only 5 ways you can ask for an appointment. And if you don't use one of those 5, you didn't ask for an appointment. Okay? So there's only 5 ways in the English language you can ask for an appointment if you didn't use that. In terms of closing on the presentation, what happens is somebody will go give a presentation and at the end, they'll say, all right, so what do you think, Ed? Is that a closing? So what do you think? Oh, sounds good. All right, well, let me know. Okay. Talk to you later. Right? Like, that's not closing. So we got to have good closing skills. Now, here's what I will tell you though. A good presentation, the natural ending to a presentation, if you've done right, they'll say to you, so what do we need to do next to get started? Like if you do a good presentation, they're just going to ask you before you even have a chance to. But we'll talk about that though, because there are other closing skills. Okay, so there's 12 skill sets. Now, look at those that you have written down, those skills, and just quickly for yourself, kind of like which one do you need the most help with? You don't have to answer me, but for yourself, I want you to look at it and say, okay, now I know of these 12 skills, which one am I least proficient at, and what do I need to do to get better at it? And here's what, now, this is a good segue for a second. I have a whole script, outline, whatever, for this whole week that we're gonna do, but how much have you seen me refer to my notes yet? Like, yeah, once. And the truth is, all I'm looking at is what's in your book. So, just know, like, based on what you're just looking at there, throughout the week, ask questions. Here's what I'll tell you. I've got great stuff I'm going to train you in all week, but if you want the really good stuff, you got to ask questions. When you say, hey, what about this or that? When we go off on a little rabbit trail is where I'm going to give you the really good stuff. Like, and not that I'm like hiding it or holding it back from you, but I've got kind of the outline, but I'm okay to free flow with this a bit too. So as you have questions specifically like what you did there, hey, I'll stop and we'll role play and we'll go through it and stuff, because like I want to tailor this to what you need. So to some extent when I'm saying look down at this, as we're covering stuff this week, do you feel like I need help on one of these pieces of these 12 skills, then let's stop and talk about it. Does that make sense? Could we have that agreement?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Number 6. How are we doing time-wise? Oh, right, it's time for a break. So let's finish number 6 and we'll take a break. All right, number 6. It's going to be systems, strategies, and tools. So systems, strategies, and tools. So we need to have good systems in place. We got to have some good strategies and the right tools. Now the good news is because we are Century 21, we have the best tools. Like really, every tool that you need, you have company provided to you. We as a company are providing you really, essentially every tool that you would ever need. But these are the 6 things that George found that he said top producing agents have all 6 of these things. A purpose, why, dreams, goals, plan, a schedule. They've got a great mindset. They either have the discipline or they set it up to have accountability. They've got 12 skills that they are really good at, and then they have the right systems, strategies, and tools. And what I'll tell you is if everything that you do is based on making sure that you have these 6 things, you'll be successful in this business. Okay? All right, so let's take a break. Is 10 minutes good, or do you need more than 10? Okay, so just in case you don't know, there is a restroom right here that you can use. 2 doors down is a little restaurant or whatever if you want to get some food or coffee or whatever. But we will start back up then. It's 10:30 right now. We'll start back at 10:40, and then we'll go till noon, and then we'll stop for lunch. And we'll take probably an hour and 15 for lunch. That gives us enough time to return calls, emails, stuff like that, and then be back at 1:15-ish. So, okay, so 10 minutes, be back. All right. We ready? Okay, so we're gonna jump into the business plan now. So in your books, you turn, the first little section there was the company foundation, now it's the business plan. So, we're not gonna actually, I'm gonna talk for a few minutes before we start to get into this. So we're not actually going to fully fill out the business plan, but I'm gonna kind of get you guys started with it. Started with filling it out today. So, but before we jump into that, I first want to go through and talk about a little segment. How many of you have read, Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Have any of you read that? Okay, great one to read. I would highly recommend for that one. I'll give you a number of different ones that I'm going to recommend throughout the week, but that one's a good one. So in that book though, well, in fact, let me give you the background of Robert Kiyosaki, that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So he grew up in Hawaii, and in this book, he says he basically had two dads. He had his real dad, who was a school teacher, who he refers to as his poor dad. But then his best friend's dad was very wealthy, and so it wasn't really his dad, but he looked to him as a father figure. So he says he was his rich dad. So he learned things from his poor dad that were good, but he learned a lot of business things from his rich dad, so his friend's dad, who was very wealthy. In that book, he talks about 4 quadrants that we are going to experience or go through in terms of business. And we don't have to go through them, but what we all fall into one of the 4. That's probably a better way of saying it, okay? So the first section, he calls this the cash flow quadrant, okay? So the cash flow quadrant. And the first place that it starts is, he says, is being an employee. So most people will start off their working career by being an employee, okay? So some of you brought up this morning when we were talking that about, when I asked why you wanted to do real estate, you said, because I want to be able to control my hours and and money and all that. As an employee, how much control do you have over your income and your, how much money you're going to make?
Almost 0.
Yeah, almost 0, right? They tell you when to show up, what to do when you get there, when to leave, here's how much we're going to pay you. Now, to some extent, you can control it a little bit, meaning like you can advance in the career or whatever. But usually this is where everyone starts. The next place that he talks about in this cash flow quadrant is what we would call self-employed. Now, you may think of yourself as oops, I did not spell that very well. You may think of yourself as being self-employed, but I want to invite you to not think of yourself that way. Before we get to that, what is the difference between being an employee and being self-employed?
Headaches.
Okay, good, I like that. You get more headaches probably down here, right? Okay, what else?
But
When you
employee
work for
is the boss.
somebody else, you work for somebody else and you're constrained by somebody else.
Okay, good. What
But
did?
employee, you're the boss.
Yeah, so you're the boss, okay, good.
All the responsibility is yours.
If it is to be, it's up to me, right, on this one, okay? Good, yeah, so typically, in terms of taxes up here, what happens?
They pay your taxes.
Yeah, they just take it out of your check, right? And then give you what's left over. What about down here?
You have to pay it.
Deductions.
Yeah, you have to manage it, make sure it gets paid and all that kind of stuff, right? Okay. Now, the next area of the cash flow quadrant is what he calls a business owner. What is the difference between a business owner and being self-employed?
Business owners usually have other employees.
Okay, good. Now, interesting to me is that is usually the very first thing that it gets brought up, which is, you're right. But it's interesting to me that that's the first thing that gets brought up on that.
To me, it's more you're self-managing, you're withholding the money that you know you'd have to pay taxes on. You're overseeing the whole business from every aspect.
Okay, good, I love it, yes, as a business owner, right?
Mhm.
Okay. What else? Now, well, first, though, let me come back for a second. why do you think that's the first thing that usually everyone says is that you have employees as a business owner? Why do people not say that down here?
Just the word self-employed, like you're employing yourself, or that was.
But yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Lori, but isn't a business owner a self-employed person? So why the distinction between being self-employed and a business owner? Which, I love it, I love that you said it, that they have employees, because, but it's just interesting to me that that's almost always the very first thing that gets said about being a business owner. And I'm trying to lead you somewhere with this.
Because a lot of people don't realize that if you're self-employed, they don't realize the correlation that it is your own business.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, in fact, here's how I would say it. So in Robert Kiyosaki's book, he talks about his Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm not going to that extent, but coming out of high school, I had two different guys that I worked for doing being like a general contractor. Like I wasn't, but they were general contractors, and I was just kind of the gopher to go help them. And I would say that the way that one of them ran their business was self-employed. The other one, I think he ran it as a business owner. Now, the truth is, they both had their own business. They both employed me as their, like, hey, help me out with this. Go run and get my hammer out of the toolbox or whatever, you know. But one of them today is very successful, and I would say has a business. The other one I would look at and say today is still self-employed. Meaning he's still scraping by, just barely getting along, and those things. Now, why do I bring this up? I want you to not think of yourself, because if I had you, by a raise of hands, say which of these categories do you think you're in, most of you would have said you're in this category 10 minutes ago, if I had asked. But I don't want you to think of yourself that way. I want you to think of yourself because the truth is, today you are now, by becoming a real estate agent, you are now a business owner. You have your own business. Meaning, does the company take out your taxes for you? No. Like, really, you are hired, quote unquote, which you're not really hired. You're associated with the company based on a contracted relationship. So you have your own business. It's just the state, the law says you have to work under a broker, and so you're working underneath the broker as a contracted employee. Does that make sense? I shouldn't even use the word employee. A contracted person. Meaning the reason you get 1099 is because you really, our business, Century 21 has hired your business, you, to come to work for them and to work under their license. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So start to think of yourself as a business owner, not as that you're self-employed. Now, what else would you look at and think about in terms of the difference of somebody who's self-employed versus a business owner? What do businesses have, do, be, whatever, that a self-employed person typically doesn't?
Well, the way you structure yourself, if you're gonna become incorporated or an LLC.
Good. Love that. Yeah, so I would highly recommend you guys to talk to a CPA or an attorney or something about, should I be structured as an LLC or a corporation or a professional corporation, an S Corp, I mean, whatever it is. But now part of the reason for that is there are a lot of tax advantages built into being set up that way. So don't just trust me, but check with a professional in that area to find out. I just know for me, when I first started in the business, about 2 years into it, I remember I went and sat down with my tax guy, and he did my taxes, and I remember I said, hey, should I get myself set up as an S Corp or something? And he's like, nah, you don't want to do that. It's not worth it. I said, okay. The next year I went back, and he's like, we ought to look at setting you up as a corporation. And I said, why? And he said, well, because I can save you a lot on taxes. And I said, well, I asked you that last year, and you told me no. And he said, well, yeah, but I didn't realize you were going to make more money this next year. And I was like, well, isn't that the point? Like every year to make more money? And he was like, well, yeah, but like this was a guy more of a tax preparer person than a CPA. And he knew me growing up, so I think he just thought, you'll never amount to anything. Don't set up a corporation. Like, I don't know what it was. But So I left though and went over to a CPA, and when I went and sat down with him, and he said, oh yeah, if you would have come and met with me last year, I would have saved you $10,000 in taxes. And I was like, oh. So for sure, check that out, because typically what will happen here is you end up paying self-employment tax, and usually it's gonna be at a higher tax rate than if you're set up as a business owner. Because as a business owner, you gotta deduct all your expenses first, then you pay taxes on what's left over. Does that make sense? All right. So I want you to start thinking of yourself as a business owner. Now, I asked the question of what else do they have that self-employed people typically don't have. Let's assume for a minute that you guys are the board of directors for, let's just say for Apple, okay? And I'm the CEO. What's the CEO's name? Is it Tim Cook? I think that's who it is, yeah. So I'm Tim Cook. I show up to our annual business meeting and I say to you guys, hey, we're just gonna kind of wing it this year. Like, I'm not gonna, I don't know what new iPhone will release. I don't even know what things we'll figure it out this next year. How do you guys feel about me?
You're fired too.
Yeah, say it out louder.
You're fired.
Yeah, I'm fired already, right? Meaning, if businesses have a business plan. They know where they're going. In fact, in Utah, where I live, on the west side of the Salt Lake Valley, I know Ed said he's been there. Have any of the rest of you been there?
To Salt Lake?
Yeah, to Salt Lake. So on the west side, there's a huge copper mine. So most of the copper that gets mined throughout the world comes out of there. And that, they also, kind of a little side note to that, but they also, along with mining copper out of the mountain, like so, Rio Tinto owns basically that whole mountain, and it's for mining copper. But they also actually have there are tons of elk and deer, and they protect them. And when I say protect them, meaning you can't just go on there and go hunting. You have to buy a permit to go do it, and they charge $20,000, $30,000. But they allow hunting because you got to control the herds and things. But I was there with somebody that was hunting at the time, and I was talking to the guy that was guiding us around the mountain, and we were talking about it. And he said they have a 50-year business plan for that mountain. Meaning,
Wow.
they figure they'll be able to keep pulling copper out of the ground. I don't know what word I was trying to think of. They can keep pulling it out of the ground for 50 years, but then after that, it's all mined out. They're done. But they have a plan. They're going to turn it into a ski resort after that. So there's a 50, meaning you need a plan, is what I'm saying, right? So part of being a business owner is they have business plans. But not only do they have a 1-year plan, which is what we're going to start to talk about, they have 5, 10, and up to Rio Tinto has a 50-year plan for that mountain. They know exactly what their plan is for the next 50 years, and then they're going to turn it into a ski resort after that. So, do you have that kind of a plan? Do you know what your plan is for the next 10 years, whatever it is? So, that's what we want to do, is be business owners that treat this like a business and have plans and a schedule and all those things, okay? Now, the other thing that I want to hit on with this is the fourth area of his cash flow quadrant, which is what he calls an investor. What's the difference between a business owner and an investor?
Participation in the business?
Love it. Yeah, very good. Is how much, and what is the difference of that then?
An investor usually has nothing to do with the business, or the business owner is complete control.
Good. Love it. Yes. So here, they're involved in the day-to-day workings of the business. Down here, they're not so much involved in the day-to-day. They may go to meetings occasionally, be involved a little bit, but they're more passively involved. This is actively involved. Does that make sense? Now, here's what I want you. Now remember we started this whole thing today of talking about the objective of this company, the mission of this company is for you to become your very best. Now, part of us saying that, so for me, part of what I want to accomplish with you is, as we're talking about all this stuff this week, The objective is for you to work through this process to be a business owner, but eventually to just become an investor. Meaning that you make enough money and you're doing enough smart things with that money that you become the investor, not the business owner that has to be involved in the day-to-day. Now, let me give you one quick example of what that looks like. We've got an agent in Utah that over the last 10 years, probably not even quite 10 years, probably only more like 8, but he really took this to heart and really started doing this. And he actually just left with his family. He bought a motorhome. He has kids, can't remember how many kids he has now, 3 or 4 kids. But the oldest I want to say is 12, youngest is 3-ish. But bought a motorhome, pulled the kids out of school. They're in the motorhome right now, driving the country, and he's actually, instead of his kids going to school and learning the stuff, he's going and teaching them the stuff. Meaning like, he's driving around to these historical sites in the U.S. and teaching his kids about it. Meaning, that was part of his, when you go back to what was his why, he has become an investor to the point that he was able to, for the next, just for 1 year, he said, I want to pull my kids out, I want to go and actually go to Washington and teach them about how things work back there. And he's going to take them around to all the East Coast and talk about, you know, the Civil War and all those kinds of things. Like, let them go experience it for a year, and then he'll come back, they'll go back to school and go do all that stuff. But he has enough money coming in from his investments that he doesn't have to work anymore. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, that's, for me, this is, I want you guys to make a lot of money, but I want you to make a lot of money so that you can then become the investor that allows you to go and do whatever that purpose, whatever you decide that is for you. That's what I want to have happen, is that you are building this business plan with the idea of becoming, this is to allow me to become an investor so that I can go do those other things. Make sense? All right. Oh, 2 things. I forgot to ask, what questions do you guys have? So Carminda asked me a question, and I said, let's talk about that with everybody. So I'm going to pause for a minute. And then the other thing was, Ed had walked in and was like, oh, it's kind of cold in here. And I said, if you guys want me at my best, it has to be cold. If you want me to be boring, we can turn the heat up. So what do you want? I'm just kidding. All right, although I feel like it's hot in here right now. Do you guys, or no?
It's warmer in here
Should I turn it down? No?
No.
Okay, I'll turn it up.
No.
I'll make a deal with you. As soon as it gets cold again, I'll turn it back up.
Is it cold, is it hot in here?
It is to me.
Oh, that's because you're sitting here standing up, moving around.
I know. I gotta get you guys something moving around then, right? All right. Okay, so now how do you do this? How do we become this? So now the reason we're having this conversation, we're gonna start to work on this commissions earned. But before we do that, I first want to take you through the process. Now, this process that I'm going to explain to you now of how to become this investor, this piece of it that I'm going to explain to you actually comes out of a book and this one is, man, I am not doing good on remembering the author's name for some reason, but this one was written, The Richest Man in Babylon is the name of the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. Great, great principles book about becoming wealthy. But so that's one I would highly recommend for you guys to read. But here's what he says. In that book, The Richest Man in Babylon, what he says is you need to learn. Now, I'm going to give you 2 versions. And the reason I say that, preface this, is when I give you the first version, a lot of times people are like, oh, that'd be great if I could do it, but I can't even afford to do that. So I'm going to give you a second version. If you have that thought, hold on and I'll give you the other version, okay? But in that book, he says, you need to learn to live off of 70% of your income. So, meaning that the amount of money that you live off should be 70%. So what do you do with the other 30%? Well, here's what he said you should do. 10% should go to some type of a charity. Okay? So, as we go through and put this business plan together, number one, when I said I'm going to give you 2 different versions of this, the good news is we control our income, right? Meaning there's no cap, is why we wanted to do this real estate thingy, is because we can make as much money as we want. So also, as I give it to you, don't go to the mindset of, well, that'd be great, except for that I don't make enough money to do what you're saying, Russ. Like, you can, because we can control our income. That's the whole point of us putting together the business plan. But in the event that you still are just like, yeah, whatever, I'll give you the other version, okay? So first is 10% goes to charity. So you need to have 10% of your income that you're giving back to people. Now, part of that, what he says is basically is there are enough people out there that are way worse off than you are, and you need to try to take care of and do your part of taking care of society, basically. So 10% that you can figure out to whoever you want to donate it to, a church, United Way, whatever. There are plenty of charities out there you can find. So 10% should go to charity. 10% is passive investing. So 10% is going to be money that you are passively investing. Passive investing means that you're taking that money and giving it to basically a banking institution. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a bank. You could put it in, Fidelity Investments or who are some of the other, Schwab, any of those kind of places. But basically is where you're passively investing the money. You're letting somebody else manage it for you. Now, why would we want to do that? Why should we give 10% out to the, even if it is just a bank, into a savings account or something?
Well, it compounds and it hopefully grows, by so many percentages a year.
Okay, good. That's a good, yeah, for sure. Why else?
Money to fall back on.
Okay, good. Love it. What else? There's at least one more reason.
You're making money while you're sleeping.
Okay, good. Love it.
Retirement.
Good. So the other reason is, what would happen, let me ask it this way. What would happen if everybody all of a sudden said, go to the bank and pull out every bit of money you have in there? What would happen to our economy? Why? You're right, but why?
Because the banks wouldn't have any money and they couldn't control us.
Okay. Yeah, the bank doesn't have, if you took all of their depositors, they don't have all that money just sitting in a safe somewhere. So if that happened, it would destroy our economy. So part of why we need to do this is just to keep our economy going. Let me give you a better reason even for us in terms of real estate. How many people are going out and purchasing houses today buying with cash? All cash.
Some people.
Not a lot, some.
Some, no question some, but how many more are getting loans?
Most.
And where does the money come from that they are, when they go get a loan, where does that money come from?
From the banks.
The depositors. So so part of us wanting to do passive investing, of putting 10% of our money into that, is it helps our economy to keep going. And for us, it helps people to be able to get houses. And the more money the banks have available, what do they do then? But what happens with their interest? Just like supply and demand economics, if they have a ton of money to loan out, what happens to the interest rates? They would go lower, right? So part of this 10% is a little bit selfish for us, of like, the more money that's in the economy, the better off it is for people to get houses and all that kind of stuff. But truthfully, just our whole economy in general, like, the multiplier of money is by you putting money passively into those accounts allows our economy to keep working. If everybody kept their money at home in a mattress, it wouldn't work. So that's part. Okay, next. The other 10% is for active investing. What does that mean? So passive is us giving it to somebody else to manage. What's active investing?
Managing ourselves.
Okay, good. Like,
Property.
give me an example.
Property.
Yeah, good. So especially for us, like, we should be buying houses. Like, if we really believe in what it is we do. In fact, I had, how many years has it been? 5, 6, 7 years? Maybe 10. But a guy that I know that was our broker at the time, he was our principal broker, or what do you guys call it here? Head broker? What's Charlene? What's her title? It's
General manager, just broker of record.
But it's, yeah, broker of record, that's the word I was looking for. In Utah, we call it principal broker. Here you guys call it broker of record. But he was our principal broker. And I was talking to him one day because he told me, and I'm not sure I'm telling you the number right, but between 40 and 50 houses is what he owned. 40 and 50 doors is what he owned. Which let me pause and back up for a minute. The agent I was telling you about from Utah that's out traveling the country with his family right now because he has the means to do it, all of this passive income that's coming to him is off of investment properties that he's bought. He just buys houses, fixes them up and sells them, or he buys them, fixes them up and keeps them as a rental. But is what he has done all of that with. So, but I was talking to this principal broker, or the head, or broker of record, which is what you guys would call it, and he said to me, real estate is meant to be bought, not sold. Like, and I was talking to him about it, and he said, well, have you sold any houses? And I said, yeah. And he said, do you wish you still owned them today? And I was like, yeah, because they've gone up significantly more in value. And he said, see, that's what I mean. Now, I will tell you, he's at the point in life now, though, that all of his doors, those 40 doors, he was starting to sell them off. But here's what he was doing, because he's probably 70. He took all of those and he was seller financing them, selling them on seller financing. So he still was going to have money coming in every single month off those properties, but now he doesn't have to manage them anymore. He doesn't have to go unclog a toilet or whatever. But so, which to me was like, okay, kind of genius of, yes, he's selling them, but he really actually still owns them. But because you guys know, when you go get a loan, which is when he's seller finance them, most of your mortgage payment is what? At the beginning, it's all interest, right? So you're paying the interest off first. So that's what you want to be doing, is thinking in terms, now, but it doesn't have to be real estate, it's just since that's what we do, we probably should be investing in real estate. But, which, by the way, as you have clients that want to invest, send them to me in Utah, because they can buy a lot for a lot cheaper there. Just kidding. So, but start thinking that way. Like, one of the examples that they use is like, as far as active investing would be, if you come across a deal on a house that is a really good deal, buy it, fix up the house, and then you can turn around and sell it for the profit. That really is a great way to be this active investing, is you may oversee the rehab of that property and then you turn around and sell it. Even though I just said don't ever sell it. 10 years from now you'll regret that you sold it, but but that's a good way of active investing. Does that make sense, what I'm saying here? So live off 70%, plan 10% to charity, 10% passive, and 10% active. If you will do that, you will become wealthy. Okay? All right, but if you're also saying, well, that'd be great, but I can't afford to do it, then here's where you start. Start with live off of 97%, do 1% to charity, 1% passive, and 1% active. If that's what you have to do, then that's where you start. But here's what I'll tell you. If you will do this, even if you don't do this, and then from there, just every year, increase this by 1%. So you start it with the 97, 111, the next year you do 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 3, 3, 3, every year, just increase this by 1%. Is what I would recommend doing. Okay? All right, so that's in terms of our, now with that being the case, now let's go to our business plan. Somebody read, so you've got in here business plan, the year, business plan for you, put your name. Somebody read, there's a quote in there from Mike Ferry that says a business plan is. So I want, if one of you will read that, but then for everybody else, pay attention to what sticks out as it's being read. So who will read it? Okay, thanks.
A business plan is a working document that is not set in stone. It is a document that is always changing, growing, shrinking, and moving in different directions. It needs to be reviewed weekly by the agent, discussed with your spouse and family before activating, and updated quarterly. It must be a public document, meaning it should be visible to you at all times. It is a reminder of what you have to do as well as a motivator.
Okay, what stands out as she read that? Okay, yeah, so what do you think about that? What do you mean? Why did that stand out?
You never set a plan, it's always changing as everything evolves.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, in fact, one of the things you'll hear George talk about from time to time on some of the daily messages is he will, Mike says here, growing, shrinking. George will always say, don't shrink, don't change the plan, don't reduce the plan, figure out how to still do it, but just be creative on coming up with it. Okay, good. What else? What else stands out to you?
making it public,
Yeah, why would that be important?
because the accountability.
That's right, I was gonna say, it's back to what we were talking about, accountability, right? If you've got it sitting out there. Now, perfect example of that, our top agent in Utah is down in southern Utah. So in Utah, we've got 4 offices, kind of 5, but 4 offices, and the one that is about a 4-hour drive to get to down in southern Utah. And our top agent, individual agent, is down there. His goal this year is 1.4 million. Well, last month I was down there in the office, and when I was standing in his office, I was listening to him make his prospecting calls, but sitting on a little stand off to the side on his desk was a thing that said $1.4 million. And I said, oh, is that what your goal is for this year? Yeah. And then guess, what's the next question you would ask? Now, this was like it was probably actually in July that this happened. But, so if it's halfway through the year, what question do you think I asked him?
Where are you at? What is it?
Yeah, that's right. Are you on track
Yeah.
to make $1.4 million? And he said, yes, I am. Now, is that accountability? Like, by having it there, of course, anybody sees it, oh, that's your goal for this year? Great, how are you doing? Are you on track to doing it? There's the accountability. So yeah, if you want it to be public so that everybody can see it, so that they'll ask you, so are you on track to make your goal? And if you're not, then you'll have to say no. If you are, then great, okay? All right, what else stands out from it?
Where it says discuss with your spouse and family.
Yeah, good, why would that be important?
Well, they're a vital part of your direction and where you're going.
Good.
They have to be part of where you're going.
Perfect, yeah, so that's tied to what we were talking about at the beginning of this relationships piece. Now, here's part of why that is especially early on for you guys getting started. Now, I know one of you had said something about, how many hours working and things like that. Early on, the way I like to think about your real estate career as like a jet taking off. Like, I wanted to be a pilot, so I guess that's like my way of like fulfilling my wanted to be a pilot thing. But when you are taking off in an airplane, does the pilot go, all right, we're just going to go half speed to get up in the air? No, it's full speed ahead, right? Now, once they're in the air, they can, in fact, I'm trying to remember, I was in Vegas last week, so I don't remember if it was flying here, or I think it was back from Vegas. The pilot said, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so the air traffic control is slowing us down. So we backed off the engines. So once you're in the air, you can do that. But do you want the pilot halfway down the runway to be like, let's slow it down just a little bit? Like, no, right? It's full speed. So think of your real estate career as that way. Now, the reason I say that, so part of this, sharing this with your family, is letting them know, like, early on, for the first few months of this, maybe even 6 months, I'm probably going to be working a lot more hours and weird hours and doing all kinds of crazy stuff that I probably won't have to do once I get this thing up in the air. But until it's there, I'm going to have to put in some weird, crazy hours, do some crazy things to get it going. Now, I had one agent that I had trained on this that he said afterwards, he said, here's what I'm going to do. He went home and he sat down with his family and he said, okay, here's the business plan, here's what I'm going to do. Now, and he had younger kids, and he said to his kids, so here's the plan. For the next 6 months, I need you to help mom out around the house, because I'm probably not going to be around as much for the next 6 months. I'm going to be working a lot. But if you guys will be supportive and don't, like when I get home, don't say, Dad, you haven't been here all day, and be supportive and help mom and all that, then 6 months from today, we're going to go to Disneyland. We're going to get in the car, or we'll get on the plane or whatever. We're going to go to Disneyland, and we're going to spend a week down at Disneyland. But you got to be supportive of what I'm going to be doing for the first little bit to get that going. Is that okay? They all agreed to it. And then 6 months later, he packed them up. They drove down and went to Disneyland. So that was part of the plan, and he got his family involved in it. Good. Anything else that stands out?
Motivated.
Okay, good. Yeah. So why would it be a motivator?
Well, you have your plan, so it motivates you to work, complete your plan, right?
Good, yeah, which we're going to get more into that here in just a second. But that's right. If you'll do this right, if you'll set this up right, which is actually really the reason we're not going to fill this out today, I'm just going to get you started on it, is because for you to do this right is going to take more time than we're going to do in the class for you to do it, so that it is a motivator. Because if you do this right, most of the time, what do you think the number one answer that people, just in general in real estate, like if we just grabbed every real estate agent across the whole country and said, what's your goal in terms of how much money you want to make in the next year? What do you think the most common answer would be? Because there's a common answer.
$1 million.
Oh, I wish. That's not what they say. Usually it's 100,000.
Oh, wow.
That's the number that is the most common answer is I want to make $100,000. But what's the problem with that? Besides, it's not so much anymore, but what's the problem?
It's just not a big goal.
Well, yeah, the biggest thing is it doesn't mean anything. That's just, if I said, even if you said 200,000 or 300,000, what does that mean? And I'm not expecting you to understand what I'm
It's too
saying yet.
arbitrary?
Yes, that's what I'm saying with
Yeah.
it. Is I want this number to actually mean something to you. And in order for it to be a motivator, you're going to have to do something like this. So let me show you how I want you to come up with the number that you're going to put in there. Because I heard of 200,000, 300,000, but after you go through this exercise I'm going to take you through, it may change. It may be higher or lower. I don't know. We'll see. But this is what I want you to do. So the first thing I want you to figure out is what is your monthly income or expenses. Sorry, not income. What's the monthly outgo that you just have to survive? How much do you have to have? What does that look like? Okay, so just to feed your family, yourself, to keep the lights on, to have somewhere to live, a car to drive, gas, food, all of that kind of stuff. What does that look like? And write that down. Okay. Now, once you've written that down, then we want to say, okay, next, what trips or vacations do I want to go on? Now, in terms of that though, I want you to actually plan the trip. Not just say, what trips do I want to go on? So, let me give you an example. This goes back about 3 years ago, but I had an agent that was in this class as we were talking business planning, and I said, what trips are you going to go on? And she raised her hand and she said, my family, she was married and had kids, I don't remember how many, but she said, my family has never been on a vacation. Like her kids, she had never taken her kids on a vacation. She's like, we've gone like little things, but she's like, I've never really taken them like on a vacation. And she said, so I'm gonna go, I wanna take them, if I achieve my goal, I'm gonna take them to Florida. We're gonna go to Disney World. And she planned out so part of what I'm saying this trips thing is I want you to go figure out how much is the airfare, what hotel are you going to stay in, how much is it going to be per night, what are you going to do when you get there. So for her it was, we're going to go to Disney World. Okay, well how much are the tickets and how many tickets are you going to need for your kids? And really figure all of that out. Like figure out how much money is it going to cost to go on that trip when you want to go do it. Does that make sense? And so like how much is food going to be, like you're going to go out to eat, and how much are you going to spend and all that kind of stuff, so that you just know, here's how much that's going to cost, okay? Now, once you've done that, so do that for however, in the next year, so you can do this plan however you want to do it, whether you want to do it, say, I'm going to just figure it from now until January, or you can just say, okay, I'm just going to do mine on, this business plan is going to go from September, whatever today is, 24th till next September 24th. That's however you want to do it, I don't care. But how many trips are you going to go on? Are you going to do just one, or you want to go on multiple trips? But figure it out, decide, but research it to figure it out, so that you're exactly knowing exactly how much it's going to cost. Are you following me? Okay, so that's what you're going to do there. Then the next thing you're going to do is, okay, just say, do I have some debts that I want to eliminate? Is there some money that you have, either credit card debts, school loans, house, whatever it is, but decide how much do you want to pay off, or how much do you want to Do you wanna wipe it all out, part of it? I mean, whatever it is, but decide, in the next year, I'm gonna cancel out X amount of dollars in debt. Okay? Then, next is, I'm just gonna call it things here. Have you got things you wanna buy? Are there some things you wanna to say, like, I wanna buy a new car, or I wanna buy a new house, or a new living room set, whatever, family room, whatever it is. Are there things that you want to buy there? And then next, how much money you're going to have in savings? How much do you want to put into a savings thing here? And how much to charity? So this is not necessarily in any type of an order. I'm just kind of, as I'm thinking of things, throwing it up there. So this is not to say this is all inclusive. If there's other things you can think of that you would want to do, throw that in there. But actually research it to where you know exactly what it is you want to do. Then from there, total that up. And that's the number that I want you to write in here for the total commissions earned. What do you think the chances are that when you do that, it's going to come out to be a round number like 200 or 300 or 1.4 million? Meaning you can round it up, that's fine. But I actually would recommend that you don't round it up. Like, meaning when I told you the agent that I saw his goal was 1.4 million, I actually would have loved to have seen it be 1,378,642. Like, I would love to see somebody's goal in terms of income to be like that. I mean, I get why we would maybe round it up because it's easier, but to me, it will mean more. Like, if you saw somebody's goal and it was $236,482, like, wouldn't you be like, holy cow, that's like a detailed number? Like, but what would be the advantage of that?
Because that was a really thought out decision and they had a plan in mind.
That's right. That number actually, if I get that number, I know I'm gonna hit all of these things. Now, here's the cool thing. So that lady, finish that story. The lady that I was telling you that said, I've never taken my family ever on a vacation. A year later, we were having a summit, and she came running up to our summit and grabbed me, and she said, Russ, I gotta tell you, I just got back from Florida. I took my family. She told me I made X amount of dollars. She's like, it's the most my family's ever had. I took my whole family on vacation. I said, that's so cool. What's next? And she said, now I'm going to start work planning towards, I want to take them all to go to, I can't remember where she said. I want to say Italy or something. But like, if you have that kind of as your motivator, when it comes time to prospect and get on the phone and you're like, I don't feel like it. Like, even have that as you're researching these trips and things, print out some of the picture of the hotel or whatever it is that you have to look at to be like, as your vision board of like, okay, I'm doing this because I'm going on that trip. I'm not, maybe even to the point of you sit down with the family and say, hey guys, a year from today, we're going to Florida. And here's the plan, and this what I mean. This is back to get the family involved. When you sit you sit your kids down or whatever, and you're like, okay, or your significant other, okay, we're gonna go to Europe and we're gonna do all this stuff, and we're leaving next year. Like, when you aren't working next week, what are they gonna say to you?
We're never gonna get it.
Yeah, it's like, are you sure that we're gonna be able to afford to go on this trip when you're never at work? You're never prospecting? Get on the phone, make some calls, come on, right? Okay, does that make sense? So that's what we want to do in terms of that number right there. That total commissions earned, I want it to mean something to you. All right, average commission. So this one is going to be somewhat office you dependent, but for the newer agents, what's the average commission earned? Like, what's the average commission check that an agent gets here? You guys tell me.
About 10,500, 11,000.
Okay, does that sound good to everyone? So then let's for ease of right now, let's just say it
I
as,
think it's higher than that.
I think it is
It's
too.
probably like 15.
I wanted to say, I thought the number I heard was like 12. Do you have any idea, Jim?
12.
12 sounds good.
Yeah, so I wanna say that, but I'm fine if we say 10, so that's good. I mean, especially because for right now, what I'm showing you, it will be easier to show you the math. But really, at the end of the day, you could go back and ask your manager at your office, like, what is the average commission for our office? Because it's probably gonna vary office to office, right? Who is Thousand Oaks?
Here.
Yeah, it's probably different there than Santa Clarita, right? I mean, I don't know, but our home
It
price
is.
is different than their
Right,
Thousand Oaks?
Westlake Village, Santa Clarita, Oxnard, it all varies.
Yeah, so that's, to some extent, and really, it's gonna vary agent to agent, like, so, but you gotta start with something, right? So, all right, so let's say that, we'll just, for the sake of ease right now, we're gonna say 10,000. So total business expenses. Now, on this one, I don't put a number in there, but on the other side, it says percentage of earned income. I would say, I usually say, for that one, put 20%. Now, that's high, but if you go back to what I was saying here, under this business owner, if you're doing it right, if you're structured and set up right, like you're probably writing off your car as a business expense, and the gas that you're putting in it, and your cell phone bill, and part of your house payment potentially, like, again, consult your CPA, don't trust me, like, and I'm glad we're recording it, because now I have proof that I said that, so, consult your CPA, not me, but if you're doing it right, it probably could be 20% because you shouldn't be spending a ton of money, but you're gonna have high business expenses because you don't wanna have that all as income, right? All right, so total closed transactions. Okay, so let's say that I was going to do 250,000 was my goal in terms of the income. And I'm going to get paid what you guys said is an average commission check of 10,000. If I divide that into 250,000, how many transactions do I have to do to make 250,000? 25, right? 25 transactions would equate to 250,000, right? You guys are like looking at me like, did I do something wrong or are we good?
No, you're good.
Okay, I tried to keep it simple. So we good? All right, so 25 closed transactions, which would be how many per month, basically? 2. Is that doable? Yeah. Very doable, okay? So for sure I can do that. Okay, so total closed transactions, 25. Now, buyers and sellers. Of those 25, how many are gonna be buyers and how many are sellers? Now, here's what I will tell you. Typically, not always, but most of the time, new agents, which most of you are newer, are gonna be higher, you're gonna be more buyer dependent early on than seller. And it's just the way it works out that usually you're gonna do more buyers than sellers. So I would say you're probably gonna be like a 70% buyer to 30% sellers during the first year. Now, not always. I've watched some agents come in and be like, I'm not ever working with a buyer ever and do all sellers and do 25 all sellers. You can do that. But typically, most of the time, you're gonna be probably 70-30, maybe even 80-20 in the beginning, but 70-30. Over time, you're gonna slowly, like, think of it as a pendulum. You're probably gonna start with more buyers than sellers, but the longer you're in the business, you're gonna swing that pendulum to where you're probably more of a 70-30 on the side of sellers. Because just typically, as people mature in the business, do they wanna do buyers or sellers?
Sellers.
Why?
Because it's easier.
Yeah.
It's quicker.
Yeah, less time involved. You provide the inventory, everybody else goes and then shows it, versus you're the one out showing all the properties, okay? In fact, Mike Ferry likes to say, what's the longest time you ever spent with a buyer? How many hours showing properties?
Oh my goodness.
Just guess.
50.
Have you ever spent 50 hours at a seller's house trying to get a listing? Which that does work, by the way. I'm not leaving till you sign. So which bedroom would you like me to stay in until, no, I'm just kidding. So, but that's the reason it usually will swing the other direction, is you're typically not gonna spend as much time with a seller as you do with a buyer, okay? But early on in your career, my experience is, you're gonna do more buyers than sellers. It's just the way it usually works out. So, if, let's say we were doing that as a 70-30 or 75-25, whatever, of buyers versus sellers, what's that gonna be?
I'm sorry, question, are you trying to figure out? how
I'm
many
just saying,
sellers-
okay, if we're gonna do 25 total transactions, but we're saying probably 70% are gonna be buyers this first year, what's 70% of 25?
16 or 17.
Yeah, so that's close enough. So say you're gonna do 16 or 17 buyers to 9 or 8 sellers. That make sense? Okay, so total days worked. On this, the number we usually go off of is 240, which gives you 120 days off. That's pretty good, right? But we're planning a lot of trips, so that's good, right? We're going on a lot of vacations. All right, so total days worked, 240, hours worked per day. Now, this piece is gonna be whatever your schedule is. So, let's do, let's put together a schedule. When should your schedule start?
Monday morning?
Okay, I'm fine with me, but I'm more meaning, what time of day should your schedule start?
6 a.m. or no.
I'm tricking you a little bit.
Yeah.
It should start the night before. So why should your schedule start the night before? Okay, good, so you can plan, but there's another reason. Why else? You're right, but why else do we want it? We want to be able to plan the next day, so I'm good with that. What happens if you stay up way too late the night before?
Then you sleep in.
Then you don't get up on time, and it screws up the whole schedule. So your schedule really should start with what time are you going to bed the night before. Because if you don't, and you stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning, what are the chances you're getting up at 6 to exercise? Yeah, you go, nah, I'm not getting up. So it starts the night before. Okay, so in the morning, and I'm not gonna say what time you need to get up, but I will tell you that most successful millionaires get up in the 5 o'clock hour. So you can get up whenever you want based on, maybe, I'm just kidding. But, okay, so but in the morning, you should be doing what? What kinds of things should you do once you wake up?
Exercise,
Okay, good, exercise. What else?
read a book.
Do some reading, good, I love it. I was gonna say, I gave you that hint earlier, so good job. What else do we need to do in the mornings?
Breakfast.
Good, eat, love it. What else?
Listen to motivational.
Right.
Okay, good, I'm gonna do /listen for motivation. Okay, good, I love it. What else?
Review your day, your coming day.
Okay, good. I'm looking for one thing, and hopefully we don't have to say it, but
Your plan.
I'm gonna say it anyway. Shower.
Oh, yeah.
I had 2 different agents in, oh, we're live, huh? Pause it for a second. No. I had 2 different times in the last 2 weeks in Utah that I've walked up to an agent and been like, oh, they have not showered for a few days. So make sure you shower every day. This is my chance to get on that. Make sure you don't stink, okay? All right, so shower. All right, so what else? Let's kind of now go to business stuff. So that's the kind of things, in the morning, shouldn't we just get up, go to the office with bedhead and all that, right? Get up, exercise, read, eat, shower, and then what should we be doing first thing in the morning? So, before you answer, I'm gonna put together, this is what the ideal schedule would look like. Now, you may not be able to do it exactly this, but do it as close to this as you can and you'll be successful if you'll stick with it, okay? All right, so what would be some good things to do, we're now ready to start working. What should we do?
Role play.
Good, thank you. Why would that be important to do some role play in the morning?
You're preparing for prospecting.
That's right, when was it? May? We had gone down to Huntington Beach for a Mike Ferry management retreat, but we had flown in a little bit early that day, and me and Jeremy Laguerre, which on your daily messages you'll hear from Jeremy from time to time, me and Jeremy and one of the managers from Utah jumped in a car and we drove to Dodger Stadium, and we got there like 3 hours early. Well, they typically don't let you in 3 hours early, but we tried and they wouldn't let us in. And so we said, well, they asked us, do you have field passes? And Jeremy was like, yeah, we got field passes, which we didn't. But he was thinking maybe they would let us in if we said that. And he said, yeah, we have field passes. Oh, well, you got to go down to this particular gate to go down to the field level. So we're walking down to get to there, and I don't remember which gate it was we got to, but it was on, well, let's see, where was it? Would have been right field, right at the end of right field, basically, at Dodger Stadium. There's a gate open and nobody's standing there. So we just walk through and just act like we know what we're doing. And, oh, what's the statute of limitations, do you think, on something like that? Since we're live, I better be careful, but, yeah, because, yeah, we're trespassing, basically. So we just walk through the gate and we just act like we know what we're doing, and we see all these workers there walking around doing whatever. But we went and just sat down in one of the chairs and just acted like we knew what we were doing. Guess what? And the Dodgers were playing, who were they playing? I want to say the Diamondbacks or something. So Arizona Diamondbacks are out on the field. What are they doing?
Practicing.
These guys get paid millions of dollars. Why would they be practicing? That's right. So like my point is, do you need to role play?
Yes.
Yeah, they were role playing. They were out there role playing, like if a ground ball gets hit to me, I got to do this, and then I'm going to get up and throw it. I mean, they were role playing before they played the game, right? So we want to start our day doing some type of role play. Okay. All right. So typically, I just say 7:30 is what time you should be doing that. Now, how many of the offices here are doing morning meetings? I know that Wood Ranch does. I don't know.
Valencia does it once a month.
Okay.
Yeah, around 11 in the morning. And then we have weekly meetings as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
We
we-
meet as a team and then we do role playing.
Okay. Good.
We
Okay,
have, we
so-
have a mentor, every Friday morning when we role play and talk.
Okay.
Talk about what, I mean, I've only been on the board since Thursday, so.
Yeah.
But that's
So in
what
the
I
3
saw
days you've
Friday.
been in the business,
Yeah.
it's been okay. Good. I love it. All right. So at 8 o'clock every morning in Utah, at our main office in Utah, we do a what's called morning ascent. So at 8 o'clock, which would be at 7 o'clock here, but the good news is it's always streamed live on YouTube and recorded. So if your office is not doing it, then I would recommend at 8 a.m., which so you wouldn't be watching it live if you do this, but if you go to YouTube, you could watch our morning ascent that we do. The idea of that is it's some motivational stuff. So Monday and Tuesday we'll usually do some motivational stuff. Wednesday is book club. So right now they're reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey. And they, on Wednesdays, just talk about what they've learned from reading the book. And then Thursday, Friday is more motivational stuff. So that, the idea of this is to get your mindset ready to start prospecting. Then at 9 o'clock, I would say you should be on the phone prospecting. Now this afternoon, we're gonna get into like, what should you do prospecting wise? We'll get into that later. But from 9 until at least 11:30, I'm just gonna say 12 though here, should be prospecting. At noon, go get some lunch, whatever, and then at 1 o'clock is when, oops, I'm spelling poorly here, is when you should go do your lead follow-up. So from 9 until noon, you're generating new leads. Then at noon, go get something to eat, whatever, come back at 1. At 1 o'clock, now go through and do your lead follow-up. You've got all these leads you've generated, either then or last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever. Go through and call those leads. Oh, I just remembered something I didn't say earlier. When we were talking about the 12 skills and we were talking about pre-qualifying, I want to go back to that for a second. When we were talking about pre-qualifying, and I said that there's a difference between pre-qualifying and disqualifying, what would be the purpose of our pre-qualifying? I didn't finish that thought. I kind of got to there and then I stopped. So what would be the point of pre-qualifying? And somebody said,
Motivation.
yeah, ultimately that's what we're trying to find. The purpose of pre-qualifying is to figure out the motivation. Now, here's what I didn't say that I wanted to say. For you guys, since most of you are newer, I don't care what their motivation is, go on the appointment anyway. Why? Why would I say, as a new agent, if you get an appointment with, let's say, a for sale by owner, but they really don't have the motivation, but they'll let you come out and meet with them, I'm telling you as a new agent, go do it.
Experience.
That's right. Because I want you to go get the experience of going and doing the presentation. Now, over time, when you figure out the motivation isn't there, you're gonna go, yeah, I'm not going on that appointment. So you will decide not to go. But the point of pre-qualifying is to figure out what the motivation of that seller is, and is it worth going out there? But as newer agents, go anyway. Because it's gonna give you the experience to get you better at doing it, okay? All right. So back to our schedule here. So 9 until noon basically is prospecting. Noon, go to lunch. Then at 1 o'clock, you're gonna do lead follow-up. 2 o'clock, or whenever you're done with your lead follow-up, is going to be prep time. So that's your time to get prepared for your appointments that you have scheduled, okay? So you're gonna make sure you have CMAs done, you're gonna do all that kind of stuff. In fact, remember I said for the newer agents, you should be out looking at properties and then coming back and putting together CMAs and things. This is the time to do it. The other thing I'll tell you. During this prospecting time, another thing that newer agents tend to do, really actually every agent, I'm not even gonna qualify it to new agents because I watch every agent do this. You're prospecting, let's say you're prospecting in here and let's just say you're doing some just listed phone calls. So you're calling through a neighborhood, you come across somebody that says, yeah, we're thinking about selling our house, yeah, you can come out tomorrow. Yeah, that works. Tomorrow, say 3 o'clock. Okay, see you tomorrow. Click. What do you immediately want to do now?
Start prepping.
Yeah, we want to go. Oh, it's 9:15. I have prospecting scheduled, but now I got an appointment. And especially if it's your first one, you're gonna be like, oh crap, I better go. Like, I gotta go find somebody to help me. Like, hey, will you help me put together a CMA? Because like I've never done it before and I don't know how to do that. Will you help me? Yeah. And then, which just reminded me, I never answered your question still we wanted to talk about. So I'll come back to that too. So we want to stop our prospecting and start getting ready for that appointment tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Don't do it. Keep prospecting. And then when you get down to 2 o'clock, now is when you have the time scheduled in to go do that CMA and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? I watch a lot of agents do that. They get the appointment, they quit and go prep for the appointment, and they'll go spend the rest of the day prepping for the appointment, and then tomorrow morning the appointment cancels. Now you've spent all that time, which is a bummer, but you also gave up the chance you had. So treat this prospecting time as an appointment. Treat it like an appointment. Meaning, if you had an appointment to go out and list a $5 million house, are you going to let something come up and go, oh, I'm not going to go on that appointment? Like, there's very few things that you're going to let get in the way of that, right? Meaning, you're not going to, well, let's do it this way. Let's say you've got an appointment to go list a $700,000 house. But while you're prospecting, you get a chance to go list that $5 million house, but they want to meet at the same time as the $700,000 house. What are you going to do? This isn't a trick question, by the way. I'm not trying to trick you. Yeah, you're going to call up the $700,000 and say what?
Can we reschedule?
Can I reschedule? Something's come up, right? I mean, is that the truth? What you would? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's the truth of what we're probably going to want to do, right? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm saying is treat this like the appointment. Meaning, you would cancel a $700,000 shouldn't cancel. You'd reschedule to go on a $5 million. But if you had the you already had the $5 million listing appointment scheduled, and a 700 said, I can only do it at the same time as that appointment. What are you going to do? Are you going to reschedule the $5 million? Probably not. Now, truth is, could you though? Could you call them up and say, hey, I need to reschedule, is that going to be okay? And they might be okay with it. They might, oh yeah, that's fine, whatever. Maybe when you set the appointment, they had said, oh, anytime that day works fine, just whatever. Like, so, no, you could go reschedule. Here's what my point I'm trying to make with you guys is, treat this like an appointment, meaning, if you had that $700,000 and you got the $5 million opportunity, are you just going to no-show the $700,000, just not show up at all? You're at least going to call and reschedule, right? That's what I'm trying to say, is if something comes up during this time, you gotta reschedule it at minimum. Meaning, if somebody said, come list my $5 million house, I'm telling you to say, no, I've already got an appointment, but since I know you won't do that, what I'm saying is, when they do that, say, okay, I'll come out, but then that means I gotta reschedule this down here. Treat it like an appointment. You following what I'm saying? If you will treat this like it's an appointment, you will be successful, you'll always have business. Meaning, there's a lot of agents' business who do this. Jim, how long have you worked at True?
16 years.
Okay, so that's long enough. Have you watched agents do this?
Yeah, every year.
All the time, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So, if you don't wanna be that whose income goes like this, always protect this. If you'll protect your schedule here, this won't happen. Promise you. You won't have this up and down thing. It'll be consistent and hopefully will look like this. Where you just continues to get better and better and better. Meaning, in fact, I want to pause for a second on that. I was telling you, if you will do this business right, it should get easier for you every year. If it's not getting easier for you every year, you're doing it wrong. That's what, just know that from, this is why I said I love fresh new meat. When you're brand new, I love it. Because if this business should get easier for you every year that goes by, and if it's not, you're not doing it right. Come back to my class and watch it again. This is what I would tell you. All right. Okay, so let's keep going. So 2 o'clock's prep time. As soon as I'm done, don't let me forget to answer your question. 3 o'clock then is when I'm going to go on an appointment, and 5 o'clock are my appointments. Now, you may decide on either Tuesdays and Thursdays or just Tuesdays, whatever, that you will do a 7 o'clock time appointment. But that's up to you. At Mike Ferry's Superstar Retreat in July this year, they had a panel. There was an agent up there that she said, if I remember right, she's at the office at 6 in the morning, I want to say. I don't remember what time she said she showed up. Was it 6? Were you there?
Yeah,
But what time does she go home every day?
2:30.
Yeah, 2:30, 3 o'clock, she's done. Somebody said, well, what do you do? Somebody said, I want to list my house with you and come out at 5. She said, I tell them, sorry, I can't. My appointments are 11:30, 1, and 2 or something, I think she said. Does that sound right?
12 to 2:30.
Yeah,
No,
something like that.
1 to 2:30.
But basically she said, here's when I have openings. Which, stop and think about it for a minute. Like, when's the last time you called up your doctor and said, hey, I want to come and see you at 7 o'clock tonight?
Never.
Like, yeah.
But when most of the time they'd be home probably more at 7 o'clock than they would for.
Right.
Right, so when you adjust just for.
Well, I don't know, does your doctor see you at 7 o'clock at night? What do you do when you need to go to the dentist?
Well, the problem is I usually take time off, but don't you want a good customer service, you want to accommodate?
I don't know, does your dentist do that?
No, with different type of service, right?
You know what kind of message I'm
To some
receiving
extent.
that is like she's the leader, and this is how I run my business, and if you wanna do business with me, you're gonna do it on my time. And I kind of feel that clients are gonna want that more, like, wow, something about her is in demand.
Yeah.
That she is running her ship that way.
Yeah, so now I'm fully on board with, like, you miss, at the end of the day, I love, Laura, what you're saying.
I think more like her,
Yes.
but I'm getting the,
But I disagree with you because as you want to accommodate your client, but a lot of clients can't leave. If I'm a teacher in an elementary school, I'm not going to be able to leave at, 2, 3 o'clock. I have to do it after school and it's just,
So if you're a school teacher, when do you go to the dentist?
when I go to the dentist, I usually plan probably in the summertime when I'm off. Or
Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's no question, I don't wanna be inflexible,
Right.
but at the same time, I do want you guys to see, do you remember how much money she was making, that agent, too?
I don't remember.
It was,
in the millions.
yeah, it was,
you know what I would like to know about that agent though? How was she handling her appointments though, like us, early on? Was she saying when she was making $0, I'm only gonna take you at 11, 1 or 2?
yeah, probably not. But, and that's just it, that's where I wanna go with this, is like, recognize that, and I'm totally all in board with the flexibility. Which is why I said to you, have a couple of days that you will do later appointments. But know that here's the key, to answer your question, Laura, if you're doing this, you can do whatever you want. Meaning, if you're prospecting,
She's already in the sky flying
Right,
at 10,000 at 700 miles an hour.
That's right.
And she's cruising, we're on the runway still.
And I did a lot of her business in referrals, so she has more control.
yeah, well, I will disagree that gives you more control, but I get where you're coming from.
Right. she's
And I'm okay with it, meaning, remember, I said to you, part of this business plan is sitting down and saying, for the first little while, I'm gonna be gone crazy hours, so I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
We're accelerating.
But I am also wanna be very, very clear that if you will do this every day from 9 until noon, you can take control of your business that way. Because here's why. Do you remember what she said she does? If somebody says, well, I can't, I'm a school teacher, I can't get off to come and meet with you. Do you remember what she said she does? She just refers it out. Meaning, if I walked into let's hypothetically say that door opened in 2 minutes, and let's see, Alex Scandell just walked in and said, hey guys, I got a listing appointment scheduled for tomorrow at 7 o'clock, but that doesn't work for me. Who will do it and pay me a 50% referral fee? Who would raise their hand right now? Yeah, notice that, okay, like we can auction it off. Okay, who will give me 55%? Do I hear 60, 61? See, I mean, we could auction off that. So know that like that's the other thing that she does. If she comes across somebody that says, I can't do it, she says, oh, you know what, great, that's awesome. Let me get one of my other agents that I work with. I'll have them come and meet with you. At that time, she schedules the appointment, and then you can walk out to anybody and be like, hey, yeah, I got a listing appointment for you. How much would you pay me if you get the listing and it sells? Like, then I'm gonna get paid 50% or whatever, and I don't even have to go on the appointment. Does that make sense? So, but here's the key. With all that being said, I'm great with it. If you decide you want to do an 8 o'clock or a 9 o'clock appointment, decide that. But here's the key. Put together the plan of the days you're going to do it, and then that way you can go to the family and say, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Lori, you married, kids?
Yes.
How many?
Well, I have 2 that are gone, but 1 at home,
Okay, so how old's the one at home?
12.
Okay, perfect. Do you think if you came to the one that was 12 and said, hey, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm not gonna be here at dinner time, you're on your own for dinner. You're gonna have to figure it out on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yes.
Would that be okay? Especially if you said to that 12-year-old, hey, but in a year from now, like, we're going on your dream vacation. But you gotta be okay that I'm not cooking you dinner on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because I'm working.
She's happy I'm not cooking dinner.
She'll be glad you're not cooking dinner,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay, so does that make sense though? Now, so to me, this is the ideal schedule. If you set this up as this is what my schedule is, and then just followed it, you'll be successful. You will not do this, you'll build this in your business. Promise. Now, what do you do though if you're new and I don't have any appointments now at 3, 5, or 7? Do I just go, well, all right, I guess I worked till, I didn't have anything to prep for, so, and I don't have any leads to follow up, I'm done at noon.
Well, prospect.
Do more prospect.
Yeah, here's what I would recommend that you do. Now, I already told you one thing. One of the things that you should be doing when you don't have appointments here early on as a new agent, go schedule an appointment to go out and preview some houses. So go preview some houses. Call up the agents. Like I said, if you call, so Janine, you tell me, if you had a listing and one of these guys called you and said, I want to go preview your listing, what would you interpret that to mean?
I would think that they had a client that was interested in it and they were gonna preview it before showing it to them.
But if they said preview, you know they are not taking the client with them, right?
Yes.
So I just want you guys to hear that, so that if you call somebody and say, can I go preview your listing, they're not gonna assume you're showing it, or they shouldn't assume, they might. They shouldn't assume you're taking the client with you, it's just you're going to look. Now, if you get somebody that calls you on that, let your seller know, like you don't have to leave when it's an agent previewing the house. They'll just come, and they're gonna be really, remember the future pacing, they're gonna be fast. They're gonna just walk through the house and be gone. Like they're not gonna examine the house. Like they're literally gonna go like this. And walk out the door. Like they might be there for 5 minutes. Like that's, and for you, that's all you really need to do. Is you're just, because what are you trying to see when you're previewing?
floor plan
Yeah, condition, like what is it, and the other thing, the thing we're missing off of the MLS is scratch and sniff. Like, cause like people can see pictures, but we can't smell the house, you know, so like, that's what we need to invent, Jim. If you can, like, when you're looking on the MLS, like, scratch the picture and be like, oh, that's what that room smells, you
I
know,
think
oh,
somebody's
it smells like
working on
cat
that.
feet, that's awesome. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Okay, so this is what you want to do, but in the event that you don't have that, here's what I would recommend doing, which we'll get more into this later, but is I would stop by and knock on some doors of FSBOs or expireds during this time. So go hit some for sale by owners or expired listings. Go knock on their door. Now, we'll talk more about that this afternoon. I'm going to get into exactly how to do it and all that kind of stuff. But during this time, if you don't have appointments for listings or buyers, then go out and preview properties, practice doing a CMA, go out and hit some for sale by owners and expires. But I'll tell you, if nothing else, if you will just protect this, so I'll include the morning. If you'll do this every day to lunch, just protect it till noon. Just be like, I'm not gonna waver till noon. If you'll do that, all the rest of this will take care of itself. Just role play, get some good morning ascent or your mindset stuff, prospect, lunch, and then the rest of the day will take care of itself.
And do you believe that we should always go into the office and not ever stay at home?
Good question. I think it depends on you. I'll tell you for me. In 2001, I left the company I was with and went over to one of these companies where I was on 100% commission. I just paid a monthly fee. And to keep my fee low, I just said, I'm gonna work from home. Because I had thought, I've got this business figured out. I can just do it from home. I don't need any of the office stuff. And for me, like, I was at home, and my oldest right now is 20, he's almost 23. But at the time, so what, he would have been 7 or 8? No. Yeah, he was born in 95 and in 2001, so yeah, I guess 6. And my wife would be like, hey, I'm gonna take the kids and go to the pool. And I was always like, well, I wanna go to the pool. I could call later, I'm going to the pool. And then she'd go, well, hey, I'm gonna just run to the grocery store real quick, so is it okay if I just leave the kids here? Much easier than put them in the car. Oh yeah, that's fine. Hey, Dad, I mean, so-and-so's not being nice. I mean, like, if it'll work for you, it's totally fine. I just know for me, I found it, like 6 months into it, I was like, yeah, this is not working. Like, my income was going down drastically because I was at the pool, going to movies, going to lunch. I mean, like, I worked way less than going to the office. So if you could do it from home, that's fine. That's back to that discipline and accountability. But if not, and honestly for me, like, I still really do feel like there's something to the camaraderie at the office, but there are some that can do it, and if you can do it, great. I guess is what I'm saying. But for me, most don't do as well as they could, I guess. But you gotta figure out what works. So, I don't know. What other questions? Remember I said you get the good stuff when you ask questions? All right, so let's answer your question. Do you remember what you asked me now?
Oh.
I went on a listing appointment, and the husband asked me, so Carminda, tell me, when I went to look for reviews for Carminda, I didn't see any.
So, she had the client, she went on a listing appointment, and he asked, like, hey, I went to do my research and was looking for reviews about you and I couldn't find any. So, she said, tell me what you
She
said.
said, well, to be honest with you, I'm new to real estate.
Yeah, she just said, to be honest, I'm new. And the good news is, he said,
Well, somebody has to start somewhere.
yeah, we all have to start somewhere, but unfortunately, she didn't get the listing. But, so here's what you want to do to get those reviews and have those. Here's what I'd recommend that you guys do. are you guys familiar with the ZAP system?
Yeah.
Okay, no, okay, so ZAP is like, it's a company-provided CRM. So, we aren't gonna get into it today. Is somebody training on that? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it's monthly right now.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, so there's some trainings that'll be offered on it, and in fact, actually, I'm going to start creating some videos, and in fact, I have it on it as a to-do tonight. I'm not sure I'll do it tonight, but I have it as a to-do tonight.
Shame on you.
I know, but although I'm gonna get some accountability, so I'll let you guys hold me accountable to it. So, my plan is to create basically some basic training videos that I'm gonna then send out to the whole company, both Utah and California, saying like, here's how to basically log in. And now that you've logged in, this is what you need to do next. And create some videos that are forcing is the wrong word, trying to get agents to use the system more. But so it's a company provided CRM, but here's the cool thing with it, is once you put the people into their system, so I would start by putting people in there just like, and in fact, if you guys want to, we'll do this on one of the days. You could, on your phone right now, take every one of your contacts and put it right into the ZAP system, and we could do it like, it takes 2 seconds to do it. Like, you just put the app on your phone, go to contacts and hit import, and it'll pull every person from your phone and put them into ZAP, which is awesome. Then from there, so here's what I would recommend doing. Once they're in the system, you can go and ask them for a review. You could have them do a review on you. Now, granted, they may not have done anything real estate with you, but they could go do, if they were past business associates, you could ask them to do a review. And then, what are we at time-wise? Oh, geez, we're past time, so it's time to stop. But let's do this. We'll stop for lunch, since I told you guys we'd stop at about 12. We'll stop for lunch. As soon as we get back, I'll pull up my ZAP system and show you where the reviews will show up, so that you guys can see it. So this is the perfect example of when I said that was not part of the training plan, but if you guys ask the question, I'll give you some good golden nuggets. Okay? All right, so it is 10 after 12. So let's do an hour and 15 minutes. So 1:25?